Good morning and welcome to Cradle-to-Career's Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Boards meeting. My name is Mary Kate Cruz-Jones and I am the Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships here at Cradle-to-Career. Today's meeting will be a hybrid meeting with members conducting this meeting from remote locations and some of C2C staff operating out of the Cradle-to-Career Data Systems office at 400 R Street in the lovely Sacramento area. I wanted to welcome and thank the members of the public who have joined us here. We appreciate you and we look forward to hearing more from you. Before we begin, a small note to members, please ensure that you remain on camera throughout the duration of the meeting. This is to be in compliance with the requirements set forth in the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. If at any moment a member needs to step away from their camera, please feel free to turn it off and share with your fellow members as well as the public that you will be doing so. Again, we need to do this to be in compliance with Bagley-Keene. If you can't share that information publicly, please reach out to C2C staff. There are many folks here on the line and we'd be happy to support you and voice that over for you. Translation services. So today we will be offering translation services in Spanish. Thank you, Aldo and Mark, for your help here today. To listen to the comments given in Spanish, please select the globe icon at the bottom of the screen that says Interpretation, and then select Language Interpretation and Spanish. You will then hear the live rendering of the comments in Spanish, and I will pause for a moment for Mark. Please take it from here to translate.
Very nice. Thank you, Mary Kate. We'll provide the same instruction for the benefit of those listening in Spanish today. Muy buenos días a aquellos que nos acompañan y que deseen escuchar el programa en español. En breve aparecerá en la parte inferior de su pantalla un icono de un globo terráqueo que dice Interpretation, interpretación. Selecciónelo y de ahí seleccione su idioma Spanish o español y podrá escuchar el programa enteramente en su idioma. Thank you, Mary Kate. Back to you.
Wonderful, fantastic. So for members speaking today, we ask that you introduce yourselves and say your job title or affiliation. And we ask that you say your name slowly and then pause briefly before proceeding with your comments. So happy to model this here. Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships. Don't worry, I'll give you more reminders throughout the day. All right, as we begin today, we acknowledge this virtual meeting is taking place throughout the unceded territory of California, home to nearly 200 tribal nations. I am joining today from Sacramento, the traditional land of the Maidu, Miwok, and Nisening people whose presence, past, present, and future, we honor and respect. We will now pause for a moment to reflect. We recognize the ancestral land on which we are collectively gathered and our responsibility to support and foster learning throughout the dissemination of knowledge consistent with Cradle-to-Career Data Systems work to advance equity. We hope that this acknowledgement encourages individuals to think about what it means to occupy space on Indigenous lands, and we invite all attendees to learn more about the ancestral lands on which they reside here. And we have the link right here in the slide. So for today's meeting, it will of course be run according to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As a reminder for folks, all companion materials are posted on the C2C website. Today's meeting may feel a little bit different than meetings past, and that's because it is. We've intentionally set the agenda with fewer items, and we've increased the space for member discussion as we would like to foster a more engaged and collaborative session. And continuing to set the tone for today, I would like to note that there will be several moments throughout the meeting where advisory board members will have the opportunity to provide targeted feedback, as well as leverage your community partnerships and expertise. As advisory board members, you are responsible for generating equitable and strategic recommendations to the governing board, as well as the office. And we appreciate your continued support and partnership. I'd also like to take a moment to thank you all for joining us today. I know how deep and rich your networks are, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge the challenges or difficulties folks may be facing. So thank you so much for being in community with us during this time, and thank you for your communication with the office to let us understand what different communities you represent may need from our work in order for us to be the most effective. As always, we appreciate your encouragement and we are listening. We have a very full agenda today that has stayed the same, and we plan to end today's meeting around late afternoon with an anticipated break around 12:25 and ideally adjourning about 2 p.m. So I'd like to call this meeting officially to order at 10:09 a.m. And I ask my colleague, Stephanie Gutierrez-Valdez, to please call the roll. Stephanie will begin with data and tools, and then she will go into Community Engagement Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Borgen,
Present.
Member Catanzarite,
Present.
Member Connor, Member Faust,
Present.
I'm sorry, did I hear a present from Member Connor?
Yes.
Member Harlick,
Present.
Member Huff, Member Milan,
Present.
Member Norris,
Present.
Member Ortiz-Vilar, Member Owen,
Present.
Member Fong,
Present.
Member Ruddy,
Present.
Member Reed, Member Scheck,
Present.
Member Tarasova,
Present.
Member Watson.
Present.
For the clarity of the record, we have 13 Data and Tools Advisory Board members present and 3 absent. We have a quorum for Data and Tools members. I will now call the roll for the Community Engagement Advisory Board. Member Chang,
Present.
Member Countryman Quiros,
Present.
Member Gamboa,
Present.
Member Gonzalez, Member Gottlieb,
Present.
Member Johnson,
Present.
Member Jones, Member Korshavi, Member Largo,
Present.
Member Lopez Valdez,
Present.
Member Lopez,
Present.
Member Navarez, Member Nguyen,
Present.
Member Rodriguez, Member Takagi,
Present.
Member Viveros Walton. For the clarity of the record, we have 10 Community Engagement Advisory Board members present, and we have 6 Community Engagement Advisory Board members absent. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just voicing over for community engagement folks, with 10, that means that we're 1 over quorum. So we'll just want to be very thoughtful when we get to voting spaces. Okay, we will now move into agenda item 2, which is an update on the Office of Cradle-to-Career Data, which will be presented by our Executive Director, Mary Ann Bates. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones. It's wonderful to be with all of you here this morning. I'm going to share some updates from the office since you last met in the spring. And before I get started on that, just a quick logistical note. I actually have to sign off right after I complete this update because I need to travel for a memorial service. So unfortunately, I'm going to miss the rest of today's meeting, but you're in very good hands with the rest of the team. And I look forward to being updated on your meeting afterwards. So thank you for your understanding on all of that. What I'm going to share in today's update is to first reflect on the launch of the Student Pathways Dashboard, and then I'll share about a new partnership that we've secured with the National Student Clearinghouse, some exciting expansions to the data set with the Labor and Workforce Development Agencies departments, some learning we're doing with other states, notes on your future meetings, and some new hires. So that's what I'm planning to talk with you about today in the ED update. Next slide, please. So the Student Pathways Dashboard launched in April. Since you last met, I think when we were at our last meeting, you were getting kind of a sneak preview of some of the visuals that you all and the public have helped us develop over the last year. And one of the things that I've really reflected on in the launch of this dashboard is the importance of starting with a learning agenda, meaning starting with some really important questions that we can answer only by bringing data together across the different institutions that serve our students here in California, and to really start with those questions first and then build from there. And so as you look at the dashboard, you'll notice that each of the 6 visualizations is headed with a bold question that helps people navigate and understand, what will I get from this visual? Oh, I'll be able to address the question here. The other piece is the wisdom of user-centered design and really listening first to the people of California and then building something that is tailored to what we heard and what we heard people want and need. If we can go to the next slide. So this is a screenshot of the 6 visualizations. If you go to the Cradle-to-Career website, you can navigate through this. I'm sure that all of you as advisory board members already have, and if you're a member of the public dialing, I welcome you to go to the dashboard and play with it. The real heart of this dashboard is that it was built by and for Californians, and one of the most heartening parts of releasing this was to see the responses from teachers, students, advocates, and researchers. And it made me think back to more than 2 years ago when Shannon Serrato joined our team as Director of Engagement. She really talked about her vision for our website to be inviting, welcoming, and that people would really feel that Cradle to Career is by them and for them. So I really want to thank the engagement team for a multi-year strategy that built really how this data story was shared and all of the videos and tutorials and companion materials that were released with the dashboard. One additional plug I'll give, if you go to our website and navigate to the dashboard, you can also find a link to stories from students that we put together with the people with the Possibility Lab at UC Berkeley, who interviewed students, and you can hear them in their own voice talk about their pathways to and through higher education. So please check that out. I think it's a really nice example of how complementary quantitative data is with stories from people, and we need both to really understand how students in California are doing. The other reflection I have was on the wisdom of user-centered design. The idea of the Sankey chart, that first one on the left, the top left that you see here, the blue one that shows the flow of students, that really came out of the planning process that preceded the launch of our office back in 2020. And one of the participants in those planning meetings said that she wished she could see the paths of all of California's students like a river, right? See the overall flow all in one place. And so Ryan Estriato's data programs team mocked up different versions and watched how people reacted, right? What confused them? What were they interested in? And looked at every last detail, right? How do people respond to more colorful or more monochromatic visuals, more or less information overlaid, and really months of conversations with our data providers on the nuances of the data. I also want to give a big thank you to the data infrastructure team, especially Dan Lamery and Muni Chitneni, and all of their colleagues who worked hard to build what we heard Californians ask for. So it took a whole team, including operations and legal as well, to ensure that the data story came to life. Next slide, please. These are just a few of the social media comments that we got after the dashboard launched. I want to read the one on the top left here from the Career Ladders Project, where Naomi Castro said, "We're facilitating a workshop with high school counselors today and rearranged our flows so we could highlight the Student Pathways data story. Thank you to everyone who made this amazing tool come to life." And that's just one of the many comments. And I want to especially thank all of you as advisory board members who amplified this in your social media and shared it with your networks and did everything you could to make sure that this reaches the many communities we have here in California. Next slide. So far, we've been really excited by the amount of engagement that the dashboard has gotten. Our comms team has put together a few stats for you today. So far, the number of unique users is about 65,500 users since we launched in late April. And those tutorial videos that I mentioned have also gotten a lot of traction with over 290,000 views of those as well. We held a community conversation a few weeks after the launch so that people could come and engage with it and ask questions about it, and had more than 200 people sign up for that. So really excited about the dashboard engagement that we've gotten so far. Next slide, please. Okay, that was the launch of the Student Pathways Dashboard, something that we've been working toward for a long time, and are really excited to have that out in the world now and continue to encourage you and your networks as you have ideas, as you have reflections. We have that feedback mechanism on the website, so please keep the ideas coming. I know Ryan and Shannon and their whole teams are really looking at every comment that comes in and doing our best to make sure that as we iterate over time, this meets the needs of Californians. Next update is about the National Student Clearinghouse. If we can just go back for a moment to the prior slide. You've asked about the National Student Clearinghouse in past meetings, and I'm happy to share that we have signed a partnership with them. The National Student Clearinghouse data and bringing that into the P20W data set that we have here is going to enable some really important insights. So it'll provide visibility on California public high school students who then attend college out of state, outside of California, or at nonprofit or for-profit colleges here in California. So that will really fill in some of the gaps that currently exist in the data visuals. Students at AICCU member institutions, that's the Association for Independent Colleges here in California, nonprofit universities and colleges, their member institutions will also have their data visible in the data system after those colleges individually opt in to this agreement, which is at no additional cost to them. Currently, 14 of the 85 plus AICCU member institutions have signed that agreement. And then the third category would be students who apply to or enroll in our public higher education institutions here in California, but then transfer out of state or to non-public colleges after they start. And so this will give us a lot of really important visibility into filling out the gaps in the Student Pathways dashboard, and also for the planned transfers dashboard as well. So we're really excited about this partnership. Next slide, please. This partnership relies on a lot of collaboration with many different entities. So our budget at the Office of Cradle-to-Career Data is covering the costs of the agreement. The National Student Clearinghouse will prepare the data on those California high school graduates or the students at participating AICCU schools. And then the California Department of Education is partnering on the data submissions to the National Student Clearinghouse. So based on that, the National Student Clearinghouse will then return files enabling the Department of Education's reporting on the college going rate, and also share that data with the Cradle-to-Career data system. The C2C agreement enables sharing that NSC data with state-level partners, including the Department of Education, the Student Aid Commission, and the 3 public higher education institutions. NSC has also agreed that the higher eds, so the community colleges, CSU, UC, may share with Cradle-to-Career the files that NSC already prepares for them at no additional cost to the state. So all combined across all of these collaborations among CDE and the higher eds and Cradle-to-Career will be able to use rich data to power public data tools on the C2C website. So we're quite excited about this. Next slide, please. When we last met, you also heard about the task force that the office put together in collaboration with the Labor and Workforce Development Agency to do the largest expansion of the data system to date, meaning bringing in significant new and additional workforce data from the departments that are under the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. And so most of that new data focuses on people who are participating in workforce training programs and in apprenticeship programs. So it'll really provide a richer view of the paths that people take, even beyond higher education, right, with workforce and apprenticeship programs. And so we're really thrilled with the incredible partnership that we've had with Labor and Workforce Development Agency. So what were some of the key steps that had to be in place here? One that's very important is that the governance and legal frameworks are in place. Based on the statute that established our office and the governing board, we have a governance framework for decision-making with the governing board in place for the data system overall. The same is true for our legal agreement. So both the participation agreement and the master data exchange agreement that all of our data providers have signed, we were able to send those to our new data providers. They could add their signatures to the bottom without needing to re-execute the whole thing with all of the other data providers. So this is a great example of how the thoughtful work during the planning process really paid off in having a very stable, long-term governance structure and legal structure in place that allows the data system to grow flexibly and expand as other partners want to join. And as you know from our conversation in the spring, this all started with a learning agenda. First from the agency secretary. So Secretary Knox sent a memo to our office outlining the key questions that their agency can't currently answer, but that they could answer if data were brought together across silos here in the state. And then the task force that convened this spring really dug into those questions, and the initial list of data points that the Labor and Workforce Development Agency's departments had put together, and then brought those recommendations to the governing board. And then at what you see the photo of here in the slide was at our May governing board meeting. The governing board then voted to add those new data providers and to add a few dozen new data points to the data system with this major expansion of workforce data. And now the year ahead, this coming fiscal year, our team and all 4 of those departments will have a lot of work ahead. But we have a replicable process for defining the file specifications and then transmitting, ingesting, and validating the data. So that'll be a major lift for our office this year that we're excited to do to bring in the new workforce data. Next slide, please. As we, one thing I'd like to highlight is how we're learning with other states as well. We've had a number of opportunities to share what we're doing in California and learn from other states who are also doing data integration efforts and who have been quite curious to learn about what we're doing here in California, especially with our inclusive governance process and the public data tools that we're releasing. So we've done collaborative learning with the Data Quality Campaign. There was a virtual session called Financing Integrated Data Systems that looked at ways to braid different funding streams for this work. And then the Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes Summit, which our team attended together with CSU and UC. I also wanted to highlight, as I believe I mentioned in a prior meeting, we're part of a group organized by the University of Pennsylvania's Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy, or AISP, that's focused on racial equity in integrated data systems. And they just, the spring, released version 2.0 of their toolkit for centering racial equity throughout data integration. If you look that up, I highly recommend taking a look at the toolkit, which has a lot of relevant information for this kind of work. Next slide, please. Okay, important update for all of you. For this next fiscal year, because of the budget constraints that the state of California is facing and that will continue in the next year, our office has been charged with really being as careful as we can with our resources. And our first priority will continue to be focusing our resources on delivering the useful, accessible data tools and resources for California. And so because of that, and because of some of the budget constraints and resource limitations that we're facing currently, we're going to have the 3 advisory board meetings that you have in this fiscal year virtually. So like today, when you're meeting virtually, your fall and spring meetings will also be virtual in this next fiscal year, which will save resources both for our office in terms of your travel costs and staff time, and will also save some time for you. And I know that many of you did enjoy meeting in person. So I'm sorry that you won't have that opportunity at the 2 advisory board meetings in the fall and the spring this year, but we've made the decision to make those virtual meetings. So I wanted to let you know so you can adjust your plans if you had been planning to travel to Sacramento for the fall and spring meetings. Next slide, please. And finally, I'm happy to report that we are fully staffed. As of the conclusion of last fiscal year, we had a number of new team members join. Dan Falzerano as our Chief Information Security Officer, Belicia Smith, who's part of our executive team and works closely with me. Ron Shalhoub, who's a cloud engineer, joining Dan Lamry's team. And as of just 2 days ago, Heather Daniels, who's joined our data programs team as a research data specialist. And now I mentioned that as of the end of the fiscal year, we were fortunate to receive 1 additional position for the coming year to focus on work on the new career passport. And so we will soon be posting another research data specialist position. So I'm flagging that because as with previous positions, I'd really be grateful if you highlight that to your networks, consider applying, encourage other people to apply, both for you as advisory members and for members of the public. I believe that concludes my updates. I'm happy to take any questions. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Diana, Member Fong.
Member Fong, no questions, but really a comment. Congratulations, team. This is such an exciting update, especially because of all the integration of new data per the workforce. I know that was something we talked about, I think in the spring or the fall, in one of the meetings as something to aspire to, and to see it come into fruition so quickly soon after is thrilling. And just congrats on a full team. I know that it has been quite some time also building the team, but I'm happy that it is fully built. So congrats.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think I saw Member Countryman Kuros for a moment, but the hand isn't up.
Yeah, I just thank you so much for that great report. It's a lot of progress. I have a curiosity. I was almost surprised to see the way UPenn is characterizing some of their work and the clarity around racial equity, which also pleased me. And I'm curious if there have been discussions around or any like nervousness around being that clear with their language.
I can't speak for UPenn, but I wanted to highlight the resource because it's something that we've been a part of the group that's having those discussions, and I would point to UPenn to answer that question from their perspective. I can say that from Cradle-to-Career's perspective, we remain focused on our mission, which is to serve the people of California with the data that they need, and advancing equity is in our statute, and that's part of what we do.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Member Shack.
Thank you, Member Shack from DTAB. And I guess I'll squeeze 2 questions in there, one on the data. I think it's really great that workforce data is being added and that we continue to improve. And excuse me, let me get my camera back on. And beyond that, I'm curious on the horizon. I'm really interested in justice involvement and data points related to that. And I'm curious if you see any additions along that front on the horizon, specifically maybe Department of Justice, maybe Department of State Hospitals. So that's question number 1. And then the question number 2 is more about process around, I too am kind of a little bit saddened that we will be all virtual in the coming year. And I'm just wondering, do you see any opportunities for members to interact in person? And any ideas also on, like, is the protocol strictly virtual, or can people kind of come into a conference room if they're located nearby?
If you're located nearby. Okay, let me answer this in order. If you look at the recommendations that came out of the task force, and actually also the original memo from Secretary Knox for the workforce data, both of those documents highlighted the usefulness of justice system data for understanding pathways of people who are justice involved. So that was definitely highlighted, and the questions that could be answered with those were highlighted in both of those documents. So I would put that in the category of something that, our boards, the task force, and I believe all the way back to the planning process had highlighted as something useful for the data system to do for this coming fiscal year. Our resources and what our team can handle will be completely maxed out just working on the workforce data and the NSC data. So we're not aiming to try to move the needle on that in the immediate future, but I would put that in the category of things that have been repeatedly raised over time and that I would expect people would continue to raise as important possibilities for the future. So the way I'm thinking about this next year, especially given the budget environment, is we're going to be heads down on delivering what we can with the data that we've got and integrating the new data that's coming in. And then hopefully in future years, when California's budget outlook is a bit better, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm just going to assume that will be the case, then that would be a great opportunity for these advisory boards and for a governing board to think through possibilities for additional data. But I would point you to what was in the memo from Secretary Knox, and then also in the report from the task force to the governing board in May, which is you can find on the May 9th meeting materials on our website for that as well. Okay, that was question one. The second question was for in-person. So I'll let Mary Kate answer that in more detail if she would like to. From our perspective, you either run a meeting virtually or you run it in person. Having hybrid is kind of the hardest of all worlds. So I don't expect us having hybrid meetings for that, and also want to be sensitive to, we're making decision to have virtual and aren't paying for travel, and so that could get a bit messy. That said, if some of you want to organize informal happy hours wherever you are, either in Sacramento or Southern California or wherever else, I think one of the things we were just talking about yesterday is how people in our advisory boards or the broader community can foster a community of, I think we use the term data geeks. I'm not sure what term you want to use, but people who love this data, have called for it and want to use it to get together and form a real community. So I'll just mention that if you want to find opportunities to get together in a social setting with other people who care about this data, all the power to you. I know it may be disappointing not to come together in person this year, so I hear you. Member Gottlieb.
Adam Gottlieb, Community Engagement Advisory Board. Regarding the AICCU campuses that are individually providing data, just curious, I think you said there are 14 or 15 that have the 85. Just acknowledging many of us either work at AICCU institutions or are affiliated with those institutions through leadership roles or just broader partnerships. So if at any point we can maybe get a list of who hasn't, and if we can work with you all to try to engage them on behalf of the board and work on that, probably in partnership with Tom on the governing committee who works at AICCU, we'd be happy to.
I really appreciate that, Adam. I would be happy to have to share with the advisory board members which institutions haven't yet signed up. And exactly as you mentioned, I think Tom Vu, governing board member for AICCU, would be an excellent partner on that. Also, Ryan Estriato on our team as the director of data programs has been working, he and his team have been working closely with Tom on that. And so I think what you just mentioned would be quite helpful. And I'd like to ask maybe Ryan, if you can follow up with Adam specifically and with other members too who are interested in this, that would be really helpful. And our hope is I think now that the dashboard is live, it may be a bit more tangible for institutions to see what information can be shared and that it's only aggregated, that no individual data is shown, right? It's for groups of students. And the way that we've structured this partnership, at least from my perspective, is quite favorable for our partners in that our office is covering the cost of the contract with the student clearinghouse, and I believe almost all of them may already send data to the student clearinghouse. So it's just a matter of acknowledge, the authorization for data to also be used for the purposes of Cradle-to-Career. So really appreciate that, Member Gottlieb, and I'll ask Ryan to follow up with you and others on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gamboa.
Thank you, Mary Kate. I wanted to, as Member Gamboa, again, acknowledge, like my colleagues here, the amazing work that you guys have done, especially to strike a contract or an agreement with the National Student Clearinghouse, which I'm sure was not easy. But my question on some of that is, will we be able to then subset, because I do know that they do have data on military families and military students. Will that be a subsection that we'll be able to pull over?
That's a question.
Especially with the new budget and everything.
Was that specific to the National Student Clearinghouse or more broadly? Yeah, let me ask my team to look into that and get back to you on it. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but thank you. So Ryan, I'll add that to your list as well, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Welcome.
Member Borgen.
Yeah, kind of on the same question, our local office contracts directly with National School Clearinghouse for local data as well. And so since the state signed a contract in partnership with C2C, I'm wondering if there's a way to also piggyback potentially to receive those regional or LEA-based reports that National School Clearinghouse also provides to individual districts and or regions.
Alluding to the prior comment, it took us quite a bit of time to negotiate the agreement. And what agreement we have is that we will be able to get the state level data, which, because based on the files that CDE submits, it would be all public high school graduates in the state. That's the biggest group that we're talking about, which I imagine most of the students, if not all, that you would be looking at a local level would be included in that. What we can do and plan to do as we have staff bandwidth is to be able to create a dashboard type tool where you can look at the data in the aggregate at the local level. So how we're going to do that specifically, I can't get ahead of the team who's actually building that, but what I can share is that we can share the aggregate data locally. We do not have permission to share back the individual level identified data locally for multiple reasons. So in those cases, I expect that school districts or county offices of education may continue with their contracts if they're interested in that identified data. But what I'm really excited about is that we expect and plan to work to create tools that integrate both the National Student Clearinghouse data and the public higher ed data, which we get directly from the higher eds, so kind of the best of both worlds, into combined things that can then be shared in the aggregate with the local school districts at the school district level, and we'll have to see how many ways we can slice and dice that. So I'm towing the line here on promising something before a team has actually done the work, but it is our intent to figure out how to do that as best as we can, because we know that will be incredibly helpful to many different people across the state.
Great, thank you. And just on a side note too, I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, but it'd be great to also look at that county level data on the student data story as well, rather than the legislative data. I'm not sure how many folks actually use legislative piece versus district or county specifically. So again, just advocating for county-wide data disaggregation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for your questions and comments, and I'll turn it back to Mary Kate and wish you all the best for the rest of your meeting together today.
Thank you. All right, well, that concludes a wonderful update from our executive director. Thank you so much. What we'll do now is we'll transition into our third agenda item, which is the discussion of the 2025 Advisory Board proposal process. So I will be presenting this update along with Ryan Estrellado, our Director of Data Programs, and also acknowledging that joining us here today is Dr. Christopher Nellum, who is our Governing Board Liaison to the Community Engagement Advisory Board. Agenda item 3 will consist of 3 distinct parts. The first part will focus on a high-level overview of the P20W dataset, analytical tools, and operational tools. Part 1 will conclude with a question and answer session with the data provider partners who have graciously joined us this morning. And the second part of this agenda item will focus on an overview of the public proposal submissions and then conclude with, we'll also, look at the advisory board proposal process webpage, which is revamped and I'm very excited about it. And then lastly, member deliberation. Part 3 of this agenda item will include an overview of that board member process, upcoming milestones, and then again, member deliberation. And that's where y'all will really have your time to ideate. And I think folks are really excited for that. So at this time, I'd love to pass it over to Ryan Estrellado to begin this agenda item. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kate, and good morning, members. It's nice to see everybody again. My name is Ryan Estrellado, and I'm the Director of Data Programs, and I am going to start this agenda item by sharing about our data products. So if we can proceed to the next slide, thank you. Okay, so this is part 1 of 3 sections for this agenda item. And the goal for this first part is to share with advisory board members a high-level overview of Cradle-to-Career's analytic tools, operational tools, and also the P20W dataset. And this is important context because the most effective proposals paint a clear picture of how we can improve the products that we make for the public. Specifically, the statute charges that the office build 3 kinds of analytic tools. Dashboards is the first, Query Builder is the second, and then the third is a research request process. The statute also identifies eTranscript California and californiacolleges.edu as 2 operational tools that Cradle-to-Career will help scale so that they can serve more students, educators, and families. But let's talk first about the data products, and in particular, the first one, which is the most foundational for us, of course, the data system itself. There are over 200 data points from 16 data providers in the P20W dataset. Important to note also that those are just the high-level data points included in the data elements by provider list that you can find on our website. But as most of you know, when you dig one level deeper into the details, the file specifications that we work on with our data partners include a lot more data once you start looking at the element level. This year, we've made 2 significant expansions to the data system. At the February 28th governing board meeting, the governing board voted to add the Scholarshare Investment Board as a new data provider. And with that, 8 additional data points relating to the CalKids program. And this will empower the office to help in outreach efforts that'll help more students discover and access their CalKids savings account funds. And the next highlight, the second, is about our workforce data expansion. Marianne referenced this earlier in her update. On May 9th, the governing board voted to add 2 new data providers to the P20W dataset. This California Workforce Development Board, CWDB, and the Employment Training Panel, ETP. And with that, the board voted to approve additional data points related to workforce from 4 LWDA agencies: California Workforce Development Board, Department of Industrial Relations, a current partner, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Department of Industrial Relations, Division of Apprenticeship Standards, they're a current partner, and the Employment Development Department, also one of the original partners. And this expansion represents the largest that we've done to date. For more documentation, you can find an updated P20W data system data dictionary that we've included. This one is a new resource in attachment A of the staff report. That's the data system, and now on to the first of 3 kinds of data tools that are built on top of the data system. Dashboards. Earlier this year, the office released a student pathways diagram, which includes visualizations showing the flow of students through phases of education, with the ability for the audience to disaggregate by variables like region and student characteristics. And number 2 of 3 is the Query Builder. The office is developing the first version of the Query Builder, which will pick up where the dashboard left off by making easy to use and aggregated research files available to the public. You will hear more about this work in agenda item 8 later today. And then tool number 3 of 3, which is the research request tool. The office is also currently working on developing a research data request process and secure data enclave. And again, more about this in a future agenda item later today. So far, we've talked about the foundational product, which is the data system. We've talked about 3 tools that use the data to make it available to the public. And now we're going to look at what the statute refers to as operational tools. Sometimes we talk about these as practical tools. And we'll start that by describing our work with eTranscript California. eTranscript California is funded by the California Community College Chancellor's Office and managed by the California Community College Tech Center. eTranscript California is a transcript exchange for sharing academic records across higher ed institutions. Last year, the office, in collaboration with the Community College Chancellor's Office, facilitated a task force that identified ways that we can expand eTranscript California to better serve students and institutions. And that task force enabled cross-agency and intersegmental collaboration and produced more than 80 recommendations for ways to rebuild eTranscript, as well as exploring the idea of a career passport that can support skills-based hiring. So that's eTranscript California. And now to the second of the external partners that we support in our practical tools portfolio, californiacolleges.edu, which is managed by the California College Guidance Initiative, CCGI, and is California's official college and career planning platform. The office partners with CCGI to help scale californiacolleges.edu so that all California high school students can access the features that streamline the college and financial aid application process. CCGI's work focuses on systematizing college and career knowledge, streamlining college and financial aid applications, and expanding educator access to data needed to support students and guide their key decisions on their journey. Their aim is to increase the percent of California students that receive their services, and they partner with state educational and financial aid systems to create a smoother transition for students as they go from college and into their career journeys. An update on the work so far: as of June 2nd of this year, CCGI has partnered with 430 districts and local education agencies that serve more than 2.3 million 6th through 12th grade students. So that's an overview of our current and planned tools. We talked about the foundational product, which is the data system itself, the data tools that are built to help share that data with the public, and then the portfolio of operational tools where we work to support our 2 external partners. And as you reflect on how your proposals might inform these, I'll pass it back to Mary Kate to lead us through part 2 of this agenda item. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Ryan. We always appreciate your presentations and the clarity you give us. So I'd like to share that this is our 3rd year that the office has facilitated the data provider question and answer session. So there could be some familiar faces to our members that have 3 years on the advisory boards, and there could be some new faces. As a part of the summer joint advisory boards meeting, and as specified by the governance manual, we do this section as it's an important opportunity for members to engage directly with data providers, ask questions to gain clarity, and receive context needed to strengthen member proposals. And that's our goal here today. So there are 16 data providers that contribute to the Cradle-to-Career data system. A more detailed overview of the data elements that are in the system or planned that have not yet been imported are in attachment A. Ryan referred to this in his presentation. It's in the staff report, and that's Cradle-to-Career's data dictionary. So I'd like to welcome and give a really big thank you to all the representatives that we have on the line from the 10 different data provider partners that have joined us this morning. I know we have you here, and there's timing is tight. So thanks again for your thought, being with us, and collaboration. What I'd like to do is I'll just do a quick roll call for you all. So if you could just confirm that you're here, and then that can remind our advisory board members who's on the line. Also, there's a bios that's also available on our website, should anybody be curious, but hopefully members have already referenced this. So let's start. Pamela Ong, AICCU, the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities.
Here.
Thank you. Eric Casita, Bureau for Private Postsecondary Education.
Here.
Todd Hoik from California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office.
Here. Sorry.
Nope, perfect. Thank you. We hear you. We see you. Neshka from Rychevska from California Health and Human Services Center for Data Insights and Innovation. Jessica Moldoff, a governing board member and our representative from California Student Aid Commission.
Here.
Nathan Evans, another governing board member and California State University.
Here.
Thank you. Edward Sullivan, California State University.
Here.
Adele Burns, Department of Industrial Relations.
Hello.
Raul Galvin from Department of Industrial Relations.
Here.
Hillary Berwick, Department of Social Services. Thank you. Juan Barrios, Employment Development Department.
Present.
And Noah Lightman from Scholar Share Investment Board.
Here.
Brilliant. All right, we have a quorum. My attempt at humor. Thanks, Adele. I see your giggle. So thank you. We've introduced the folks on the line. What I'd like to do is we got a few questions leading into this. So thank you, members who submitted that. I want to echo what Ryan Estrellado shared earlier today in his presentation. The most effective proposals paint a clear picture of how we can improve the products we make for the public. So the goal for today's session is obviously question and answer with data providers to seek clarification on the data points already being collected. The office has invited these data providers here in case there's additional clarification needed. And we have approximately 25 minutes for this agenda item, so I'd love to stop talking and hold the floor for members quickly here. But I really do want to ground us in the understanding of the deliberation is on clarity of the data points. So let's take down the slide deck. Let's open up the session here. We might not have time for all questions. Let's normalize that thought. Neshka, hello. I see Neshka here. Sorry, we just did a roll call. You were a little bit late. You were here. If members can raise their hand, and I can also open up and model a question. Happy to go first with that. Because I don't see any hands raised yet. So I will model with a question that we got in from a member prior to this meeting. So thank you, Member Moldoff. You're in the hot seat for the first one. So for the Student Aid Commission, how will the FAFSA simplification changes be reflected in the data shared with the Cradle-to-Career data system? And thank you, Member Takagi, for offering up this question.
Sure. So we know a few things for sure. First, I want to flag that we will not be providing gender starting actually with the 23-24 year, because that is sort of like a pre-FAFSA simplification change where they still ask that question on the FAFSA, but they no longer transmit that information to anyone, us or the segments. And then for the 24-25 year, of course, one thing, expected family contribution is now going to be the student aid index, but that should be a fairly straightforward change. The major thing is that income, which we provide, is now considered federal tax information and has a lot more restrictions because it's coming directly from the IRS. So as a result, that is completely non-disclosable to us. So we will just be providing links in that field as well. So those are the changes for that data.
Brilliant. Thank you for your modeling. Thank you for being the first question. So I'm happy to open it up to members. This is your time to ask your questions, and just sharing again that I'm not seeing any hands raised. Member Watson, please.
John Watson, San Diego County Office Fed and a DTAB member. Jessica, can I come back to the CSAC response you just gave? And you said at the very end about data from the IRS. Does that, how does that limit the data that CSAC is providing to the larger data system? Are we now missing a point of information that was there before?
Yes. Yes. So that will be there. I don't quite remember what the actual name of the variable is, but essentially it is a family income variable, which originally was coming from the FAFSA information that we had. And that is no longer disclosable because one of the changes in FAFSA simplification is that rather than a student or their contributor requesting the data to be downloaded onto their FAFSA, and then it's the student or the contributor who's doing the submission. Now the share is happening automatically on the back end, and as a result, it's directly from the IRS to FSA and then to us. So it's just now part of a broader non-disclosure agreement for anyone who receives federal FAFSA information, that we can no longer share that information, even with the people whose information it is. It is very restrictive.
Thank you.
I saw Marissa Johnson, so Member Johnson's hand, and then if we can go to Member Fong, please.
Hi, Member Johnson on the Community Engagement Advisory Board. My question, it's for all of you. Some of you may have an answer or may not, but how your organizations are responsible for publishing a lot of different data tools online yourselves. And so my question for you all is, do you do anything beyond just publishing those data tools to connect, your target audiences with those data tools?
I'm happy to start, and thank you very much for the question. Again, Nathan Evans from the California State University. I think one of the ways that we try to highlight not only our own internal data tools, but I also want to especially recognize the work of Cradle-to-Career. And in fact, Executive Director Bates joined me to present to our CSU Board of Trustees earlier in this, I guess, last academic year, trying to highlight which not only for the benefit of our Board of Trustees, but broader communities. There are many folks that are in attendance, both in person and virtually. So I think we use venues like that are very public to talk about the ways, that we're trying to make data transparent and available. In that case, we were highlighting both internal CSU sources of data that are publicly available, not only students, but also employee financial transparency data, but also the benefit and opportunity that Cradle-to-Career is creating. And so I suspect that Executive Director Bates would be willing to certainly join other public venues in that, but I think we use that as one way to try to publicize public access to a variety of data. And I think that was successful, that we got a lot of inquiries, and I believe C2C did as well from that opportunity.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, Juan Barrios, Employment Development Department. We have a little over 25 staff that are outstationed throughout the state, embedded with the America's Job Centers of California, and they go out and they train and present on not only LMI data on the web, but also C2C, to various stakeholders such as job seekers and workforce development entities, educational entities. So yeah, we try to get the word out as much as we can, as well as social media. So.
I think in addition to sorry, Ed Sullivan, CSU. In addition to what Nathan has shared, I think we've been intentional to focus on audience in terms of what we provide in terms of data available to the public through our office and through other parts of the public-facing CSU website. I know that our work is reflected often in the media. It's reflected in the work of advocacy groups throughout California. It informs legislative discussions. It becomes the beginning of the conversation from which additional questions are posed and depth is gained.
Thank you so much. Thank you all who contributed to that answer. If I'm not hearing from anyone else, I'd love to go to Member Fong's question, which was next, and then we'll go to Member Shack.
Hello, good morning, folks who are joining us. Member Fong on the D tab. And I had a question really around the process and how you're working with the Cradle-to-Career office. I would love to understand what are some of the challenges or barriers that you've encountered with sharing data with C2C, and like what support would really help address some of these challenges. And if it's all great and easy, that's also okay too.
I can speak for CDSS. We've been really working hard at CDSS for data modernization efforts, which includes a new enterprise data pipeline and a data warehousing software called Snowflake. And I know that C2C is excited to kind of join us in the Snowflake land so that we can automate sending the data rather than kind of manually sending it via SFT or an S3 bucket. And I think the challenge there is just time and a lot of people. So like I said, C2C has been very cooperative and kind of eager to do this with us too. And it's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And so it's less of a challenge and more of an improvement we're looking forward to kind of automate some of the literal data delivery so that we don't have to have individuals moving the mouse, as it were.
Thank you. Okay, Member Shack.
Thank you. Member Shack speaking from DTAB. And my question is more on the healthcare side. I'm interested in, specifically, I'm interested in the child and adolescent needs and strengths assessment, also known as CANS. And I'm wondering what if we know what kinds of data are collected by the state each year, kind of like what the volume is it individual level data? And what are the prospects of those data being used to sort of improve services and create insights for schools and educational institutions as well. And then more broadly, I am also just interested to know if there are opportunities in terms of the data that HHS has for linking with the data system, and what do you think could be impactful there?
Thank you so much, Agnieszka Rykaczewska, Cal HHS. Really appreciate that question. So within Cal HHS, two departments are currently collecting the CANS data. One is CDSS, which I believe our colleague Hillary is here as well. And then the other one is the Department of Healthcare Services, or DHCS. And in terms of the volume of data that's being collected, CDSS in 2024 collected data, so just over 77,000 CANS assessments over just over 56,000 individual youth. So some individuals had multiple ones. And then from DHCS for, I'm going to say fiscal year 23-24, there's slightly different reporting periods here. There was over 182,000 CANS assessments conducted. So it is a pretty large data set across those two entities. In terms of how we're using that data, so for CDSS, one of the major ways that CANS data is being used to improve services is for new foster rate structures. And so previously what was happening was that the placement rates were being the rate was being based on the placement rather than the individual's needs. And now the rates are or will be based off of this CANS assessment and will follow the youth should their placements change. And so really looking at that, Hillary, I'm hoping you're going to build on that for me. But I'll just add too, for DHCS, the primary way that that's being used is by county mental health plans to really support services to youth. And then before handing it off to Hillary to build on my comments, I'll just quickly note that for right now, we are not sharing CANS data with C2C, but that's certainly something we could explore with more discussion. Hillary, I'll hand it off to you because I think you can speak to the rates piece a bit more than I.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a small clarification. Everything you said was great. And it was always the case that foster youth's needs would drive their services. Historically, the foster youth's needs would drive where they were placed, and then that placement had a payment. And now it's regardless of where a child or youth is, the payment will follow them. So whether they're in a home-based setting or in a congregate setting, their payment will be based on the needs they have rather than on the placement they're in. Just wanted to make sure that we've always based payment on needs and placement on needs, but now we're linking the payment specifically to the kid.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was super helpful. So we are not quite yet out of time, but we're rounding being out of time. I see member Norris's hand is raised, so this could potentially be our last question. Please.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Good morning, Helen Norris from the Data Tools and Advisory Board, and I'm at Chapman University in Southern California. And I think this is a question for all the data providers, and thank you to all the data providers for everything you do. I heard Jessica from CSAC talk about, mention that they're no longer sharing gender information coming through FAFSA. And I'm wondering if data providers anticipate further changes in reporting on demographic data such as gender or ethnicity. Maybe if you anticipate that. Thank you.
I'm happy to just speak on behalf of the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, which is that we do not have any plans right now to make any changes to our data set or what we collect in particular.
Tom Hoig from the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office. I would also like to add that we don't have any plans right now especially to limit the collection we have. We're actually there's consideration of expanding ethnicity, further expanding ethnicity, but yes, no plans to limit any of the demographic collection right now.
And similar with CSU, I think we'll retain, I believe we are not reporting gender identity at this point, and would not in the future as far as that goes, but are reporting sex, and so that would continue.
This is not a change in what we would report. Sorry, Adele Burns from DAS. But one thing that I would just offer is something that we're thinking about, and this is not a change in data collection, but just in how we report or how we sort of organize the information is we've been talking a lot about career clusters and how we define sectors. So this is more of like a parsing of the data. I don't see the ability to put something in the chat, but if you go to advanced CTE, there's something called the National Career Clusters Framework. And this is something that percolates out from the ONET code. So this is like how occupations nationally are organized into sectors and clusters. And we've been working with some of our partners at the California Department of Education and the California Community College Chancellor's Office in terms of just like how we understand our data in terms of sectors. And this is one that's really cool because it's actually like ONET Online, which is how we define the different occupations, uses this advanced CTE career cluster. So anyways, this is not about collecting new data, but it might be something to just consider when you're, I know a lot of us are talking about integrating the workforce side of this data, and certainly trying to develop insights into like, okay, well, what careers do people go in? But then how do you organize that data around a career and a cluster? And how do you define a job? How do you define a sector? And it's surprisingly interesting how much variability in the data there is when defining those sectors. So this is a really helpful organizing framework that I'm happy to email the C2C team afterwards. Maybe you already have it, but that would just be one thing that we're certainly thinking about.
Yes, thank you. And I'd be happy to pass along to members. I think that was a really wonderful concluding remark, because we heard many data providers on that last answer, and then we heard Adele speak about how even different data providers are coming together to collaborate. So I think that that's a wonderful place to put a pin in this conversation. I just want to say again, thank you, giant thank you to all of our data providers that made a time in their day to visit us and here for our advisory boards meeting. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next year. Take care. Okay, so where I'd like to pick up on is we're going to move to the next part of our presentation. This is section 2. And the goals for part 2 are to be able to share the public proposals that we received, provide a high-level overview of how to navigate the updated proposal process webpage, and then afterwards we'll open it up for member discussion related to the proposals received. So the advisory board proposal process, it begins on in the springtime, and then it closes in May 1st, where members of the public are allowed to make submissions. This year, the office received 5 data and tools proposals. You'll see them on this next slide here. Fabulous. And I'd like to invite members of the public or even our members to scan this QR code, and you can go to the slide and you can see these proposals yourself. So what I'd like to do now is these proposals are also in your attachments. If we could actually take a look at the C2C website. So we're gonna pull down the slide deck and go live. So members, the reason why I'm going through this is it's public proposal submissions have ended, and now it's your turn. You all have the opportunities to submit one proposal. And this website that's going to be available for you to see in a moment, it's also linked from the staff report, will be a wonderful resource for you. Can everybody see the website? I can't see it on my end. Okay, all right. I'll give my colleagues one more moment to try and troubleshoot through this. Wonderful. So this is what I'm really excited to share with you all. Hopefully this isn't the first time you've seen it. This is our advisory board proposal process page. So you'll notice toward the top, there's super duper information about this timeline. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can see that it breaks down. It has that advisory board proposal process timeline right there. And then there's several drop downs. It's really interactive, so I recommend keep going down a little bit further. Yeah, ponying on the timeline. Fabulous. So those are all clickable. It's super engaging. So to ground us, we're in the summer part of this process. And this is when you all can submit your proposals. If we continue to share, go down on this page, there's resources, which are really important. It's divided by your advisory board, so feel free to check out those links. As a member, you can see that your proposal form is there. It has the rubric, the timeline, the dictionary. So this will be your friend in the coming months if anybody's thinking about submitting a proposal. What I'd like to voice over is the proposal repository, which is that little link right there. Fantastic. So this is, remember that any proposals that we receive, we save. And so this is where things are housed. So data and tools, the options for you this year in the proposal season are you can adopt a public proposal, you can submit your own, or you can take one that's been done from past years. So you can feel free to scroll through this at your own convenience and look through previous years. Community engagement, folks, as a reminder, we have not gotten any public submissions. So you can take from previous seasons or invent your own. But as a reminder, it is one proposal per member, given the changes to the governance manual this year. So I wanted to walk through those changes, and a big shout out and thank you to Angelique Palomar and Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez for your work on updating this website. It's way super more engaging, and I'm super appreciative for your thoughts here. So I think we're done with the webpage. Hopefully that was a helpful walkthrough, giving you context for where you can find things, giving you tools in your toolbox, empowering you and giving you confidence. What we can do here and now is open it up for members. If there's any members that would like to comment on the public proposals that we received, you can quickly do so here and now. Wonderful. I saw 2 hands shoot up, so we'll start with member Norris and then we'll go to member Fong. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for the website looks amazing. So thank you for that. It's very easy to navigate. I have a specific question about, I think it's proposal 4 or attachment, sorry, for or it was on attachment D, the student homeless status data element, and it referenced a system called HDIS, but I wasn't completely clear. I didn't quite understand. Does that system currently exist, or is it in development? I see that, is it in development with a proposal to add it as a data provider to C2C?
I can help with that question.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh, you're welcome. My colleague Neshka who's not on the call anymore, I think can speak to this a little bit better. But at a high level, that is a system that is being built. My understanding is it is up and running, but it's still early, and they are working currently with agencies on agreements to participate in it. And I think I'm happy to follow up with Neshka to see either if I got any of that wrong, I don't think I did, but to get more details.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Member Fong, please.
Thank you all so much. Ryan, this may be a question for you or not. The proposal that stood out to me was from Meredith Curry Nunez around enhancing the college promise definition. I also saw that data point where it said that like in the description, it says institution participates in a college promise program. And in this proposal, it's advocating for a clearer definition. Really, college promise definitions may be varying also, depending on where you are in California. But I wanted to know if you happen to have more insight into the detail of college promise program just in that data point.
Just to make sure I'm following, is the question about how it looks in the system right now?
Yeah, how it looks in the system, but also like, was there additional, like a click below detail around the college promise definition that maybe we cannot see because it's rolled up on this higher list?
Yeah. Yeah. So my understanding of that data, I think this is another one where I'd like to follow up and see what we discovered as we received it. But my understanding of that variable is that it's a yes, no flag with not a whole lot of detail beyond that.
Helpful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I'm now seeing 3 hands come up. So let's take these 3 hands and then potentially close this session. So we'll go Shaq, Ortiz Villar, and then potentially close with Catanzarite, please. Thank you.
Yes, Member Shaq. I think I also had a question on the College Promise Program proposal. I just wanted to be sure I was reading correctly. I interpreted that there was only 1 year of data, or it was like a snapshot of data on that indicator. So I was wondering if that's the case, or if that indicator is sort of updated moving forward from 2008 moving forward. And then kind of also on that data point, do you know if there's any possibility of at least having an indicator that's on the for like each student of whether they actually received aid associated with a promise program or how much amount they received? And then this is more just a comment on the homeless data. I'm also kind of a little bit adjacent to that topic, but my understanding is that those data are used within counties, and there may be work to be done at sort of pulling that data together at the state level. But one caveat to keep in mind is I think it has to do with receiving homeless related services, which may not be exactly the same as actually having homeless status, and knowing the detail about your residential situation. So just keep that in mind. So was there any input on the College Promise?
Oh, I apologize. Please repeat the question. I thought you were making comment about it. So please, I'm sorry.
Yes. So the question is, so my sense of it was that there was only like a single year,
Oh,
like
I
a
see.
snapshot. And then also in addition to that, is that correct? But in addition to that, Can you speak to the feasibility of like a individual level indicator or indicator of like how many dollars came from a so-called promise program?
The second I would need to follow up on my gut on that is that's not a variable that is included in College Promise and the way that it's like the spirit of it in the participation agreement. Happy to follow up on that though, in case there's more to that I'm missing. For the first question, in general, the way the imports work is we receive up to 10 years of data, and depending on whether or not that particular variable is available, we'll get that amount. And then I think the way to answer the question is if it exists as changing year on year, when we get updated data, we would then get that change. And so that's generally the way the variables work. There aren't any variables I could think of that we receive that is the kind of variable that we just receive once and then never receive it again, unless that's the way it exists with the data provider. But even then, it would just come in with every yearly update and just wouldn't change.
And do you know if that's the case for this provider?
That for that, I think I need to get back to you, yeah, because I would like for the team to look into the way that data looks in the system.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Member Ortiz-Villar, please.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Perfect. I just want to, plus one member Shaq's comments and questions about the individual row level data and the College Promise data point, and also curious if that College Promise like information could come from financial aid partners or the financial aid data. Like just wondering if that is something that could be possible. I'm just kind of spitting out wonderings. And then in addition, more question for you, Mary Kate. If we are interested in like sponsoring some of these proposals, is the time to do that and express that interest now? Or do we connect with other members who might be interested to co-sponsor offline? I'm just wondering more on the process as well.
Sure. Happy to jump in on question 2 and then defer to Ryan on question 1. So yes, that's part of what the session is. So folks can express interest. Nothing is formal though until you put it in writing. So what you could do in this session is say, I'm really interested in XYZ proposal. Other folks can raise their hand as a procedural reminder. 5 folks can co-sponsor, and then that's the cap. And members can put their name on one. So you would just submit it. I think data and tools, August 22nd is when you have to have your submission due by. So you could just take the public proposal if you want to adopt it as is, and then just say this is, I want to sponsor this submission.
I could answer the second one. I was just looking at our data elements by provider list, and I do not see a College Promise flag from CSAC. Whether or not it's possible, I think that's a question that Jessica is better positioned to answer. But in terms of whether or not we are receiving it per what we're authorized to receive in the participation agreement, I do not see that flag from them.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to express that I'm interested in potentially sponsoring this one. I just want to share if anybody would want to collaborate.
Okay, so thank you for that. That's very exciting. Let's move to Member Tenzorite, and we are probably going to round out the closing of this, but Member Borgen, you could potentially, in our next ideation session, feel free to raise your hand again.
Thank you, Mary Kate. So my question is also about the College Promise proposal, which I find to be a compelling proposal, but I have I guess a question for clarification that maybe Ryan could help with. So the proposal is suggesting that we get a number of additional data points around the uses of, who's eligible, uses of College Promise max funding, blah, 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 sorry. And, but I was a little concerned that one of the proposed benefits was a suggestion that there will now be a statewide consensus about what a college promise is and how to track it. And I'm wondering if that is some implicit suggestion that if we have these different parameters, then we can use those parameters from the data system to say, these college promise programs qualify for what we are considering a true college promise program. Or so I'm a little confused about how this would help promote a consensus. And, you know, if we're getting data from different providers and they have the data in different format, then my understanding is we can only get what they have. So maybe Ryan, you have a little bit of insight into this.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak generally to it. It's really, I think, is part and parcel of what the office does when we receive data. Given we have 16 data partners, it's a really common thing to receive variables that all have the same name, but they're kind of defined differently in each of the sources. And if this were something that we were looking at in the way that's described in the proposal, we'd be constrained by the requirement to, when we receive data, at minimum, for the office to be able to speak clearly about what exactly we're receiving and what it means and what the uncertainty is or certainty in any one particular variable. There are some cases, I'm thinking of some of the financial aid stuff that we receive, where we've convened the data partners to have a conversation about the best way to align the definition. But that really informs the way either the segments would transform it before sending it to us or how we would transform it once we receive it. And it doesn't, or hasn't in the past, informed any change in the procedure on the segment side. That would be for them to decide on their own. So we really focus on how the data eventually ends up in our system. And I would imagine for something like this, that would also be the case.
Thanks. That was my understanding. Just wanted to get clarity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, wonderful. I know we're maybe feeling like we're moving a little bit swiftly, but I'd love us to get grounded in the third part of this discussion, which is just a high-level overview of the process. This connects to some of maybe those questions that Member Ortiz-Villar just highlighted for us, focusing on upcoming milestones. And as a reminder, we are joined by our governing board liaison. Unfortunately, Member Gonzalez-Vasquez couldn't make it due to another conflict, but we do have Member Nellam with us. And so what I'd like to do now is we'll talk through those things. And then also another important part of this agenda item is taking a look at those affinity mapping results, making some connections there, and then really giving you all time to talk. So if we go to the next slide, please. Taking a look at the data and tools proposals. This is kind of your wheelhouse for our data and tools members, providing proposals in one of these three areas. As a reminder, in terms of milestones, the public submission window closed. That's on the next slide, please. And so you have a few options to consider. And just to make this very clear, you can choose one, but you can submit your own form. You can submit a joint form, no more than 5 folks, and you can submit a proposal from folks from the past or former public members. So those are kind of the tools in your toolbox. I do want to highlight that your submission due date is August 22nd, come rain, come shine, and late proposals will not be accepted. And then y'all are convening next, and we'll be talking about the proposals that we received on Friday, October 3rd. So that will be really exciting. Taking a look at community engagement. So in front of us are the realm of proposals that community engagement members can submit. Ways to improve feedback loops, professional development and technical assistant models, communication structures, additional tools, In terms of what your milestones look like, which is found on the next slide, as a reminder, there were no public proposals received. So you could submit your own forms. You can team together, no more than 5 again, or find something from the past. And again, this is why we went over the repository on the website. Your submission window is Friday, September 12th, and then y'all convene on Friday, October 24th. So a little bit later than data and tools. What I'd like to do now is remind folks that a part of the changes to this process is in the fall, we hear all the proposals. We don't have that prioritization process anymore. And then after that meeting, we ask for members that work with our governing board liaisons to draft a report. And this was the first iteration that we had of this. A report went to the May 9 governing board meeting, and I'd actually like to invite governing board member Dr. Nellam, who's with us here today, to just share a little bit of a feedback that you had on the process this year, just because I think that this could help us in our framing as we proceed through this process. So please.
There we go. Did that work? I look frozen. Am I frozen?
No, you're good.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary Kate. Good morning, everyone. This is Governing Board Member Chris Nellam. I just wanted to share a couple reflections on where we are so far and how the process has been. As Mary Kate just shared, although the process this year was hybrid between the old and revised processes, members Chang and Gottlieb, I think, provided a really thoughtful and thorough report that brought forward 6 proposals that represent the good thinking of advisory board members and community members across the state. As a result, as you may remember, at the May governing board meeting, we were able to hear an overview of those proposals and ask key questions about the potential for impact, the risks, and alignment with overall C2C goals and the mission of the office. I think this is an improvement on the old process. And so I really look forward to us continuing to implement this new process, reflect on the report and the proposals, and also just the additional and coming conversations about C2C's work plan and what these proposals mean for the work plan. So I appreciate the time. And I think, Mary Kate, am I passing it back to you?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then we'll get 2 new folks that will volunteer to work with you this year. So that would be awesome. What I'd like to do is tie in the third part here, the affinity mapping. And thank you, Member Nellam. I didn't even thank you. Moment of gratitude. We appreciate you and your reflections. So before we begin member deliberations, and there's some key questions here on the slide, but we did something new this year and it was the affinity map. And so I'd like to share our screen and we'll see those results. And I want to kind of call out why the office feels like this is helpful or important. As they're doing that, another moment of gratitude. I want to say thank you so much because the office received an 81% response rate from Data and Tools Advisory Board and a 75% response rate from Community Engagement Advisory Board. So thank you to those 13 folks from Data and Tools and the 12 folks from Community Engagement who completed the survey. We appreciate it. The purpose of this survey, and you could see some of the results here, was to gather suggestions, which you don't see, for improving the advisory board proposal process. So thank you for those. We'll definitely be parceling through those as we're undergoing the process. Understanding what you all view as your role of members, but then identify patterns and themes about your areas of expertise and your communities of interest. So Mirtha, member Ortiz Villar had this great thought of saying, hey, I'm interested in this. And that was wonderful modeling. And I'm hoping that we're going to do more of that in this next section. In case it doesn't come out today, this is a tool for you. And how we want you all to use it is members can consider submitting a proposal, and you could think about other folks on the team with you that maybe you can team up and submit a joint proposal. So member can refer to these responses as a resource. For example, I can see in terms of areas of expertise on data and tools, we have members Faust, Harlick, and Shack that have experiences with early education and childhood learning. That might be a great area of synergy for the three of you. I can also see that Community Engagement Advisory Board members Chang, Gamboa, Johnson, Khosravi, Lopez, with your experience with community colleges systems. So the idea here is more brains can make the work better. And so we want you to lean on each other, tap into your expertise. Obviously, the blue is for our data and tools folks. The orange is for our community engagement folks. I just did a quick call out, but we're hoping that you use this tool. We're hoping to find you see the benefit there. The office is happy to do some back channel matchmaking and bring you together should that be helpful. Because we are really hoping that, this could be helpful for you all. So, and you can complement each other's ideas. So what I'd like to talk about next is we're going to kind of move into this deliberation and ideation space. You had an opportunity to share your feedback in terms of how we can be more efficient. And so we really help that. In terms of open-ended responses, you all emphasize the importance of early sharing of the proposal ideas to avoid duplication and to foster those joint submissions. So take advantage of this session. That's what it's here for. Y'all also requested clarity about the types of proposals that might be appropriate. As part of your deliberation, you can consider addressing some of the questions that are shown on the slide to make the most of the meeting and this space. And of course, we invite everybody to brainstorm together, collaborate, and the office is here for you. So I'd love to give y'all 15 minutes here. I'll make my next agenda item shorter to cater to give you the max. If we need a little bit more, we'll see what we do. But I'm gonna go on mute. Folks raise their hand. This is your time. This is your session. I'm looking to you, members. Member Watson, please kick us off.
I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to talk about potentially a collaboration idea with respect to a proposal. So I want to briefly describe a data proposal I'm exploring, and I admit that this idea may be considered a research request at some point, but I'd like to think it could be a standard extract from the Cradle-to-Career data system. It's really around the idea that K-12 schools and districts don't have access to much data related to what happens to their students after they leave high school. And so inspired by the Pathways to College data story, I'm thinking of a concept that whereby Cradle-to-Career could provide aggregate student group level data sets to county offices of education here in California to support local district and school understanding of what happens to their students, what trends there are beyond high school. So the data would be used for planning to answer questions like, did our CTE students remain in their industry pathways when they moved on? Where do students end up in higher education and how do they fare? That's like a classic NSC question, but National Student Clearinghouse question, but not a lot of counties or districts have that information. And I think another example would be, are there factors in K-12 that may relate to student success? So I'll throw that out there. If anyone's interested in this topic, please let me know. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Member Borgen, please.
Thank you. I'm Member Borgen, DTAB. Again, appreciate the data stories that have been developed. Now we have some visuals around how we tell a story around student data and students' journeys. On a practical tools front, one thing I was considering writing or supporting a proposal around is around comparing specific LEA districts with statewide data and actually showing visualizations around comparison between the state and local LEAs, as well as other local LEAs to other local LEAs, similar LEAs as well. Potentially, sharing how different districts compare with other districts or other state, which is, I believe, not available currently in the practical tools. So again, that's something I think we would like to see as well.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you both for modeling this. It's really exciting. Sometimes it's hard being the first one to speak up or raise your hand, but thank you for making use of this session. Member Milan, please.
Hi, everyone. So on my end, I'm kind of just like still wondering like how can we represent the experiences of undocumented youth and youth from mixed status families? I know that there was like when the C2C was kind of like originating and all that, like right, there was a decision to very clearly like not include legal status measures or immigration status measures. But I think like and I'm in LA City, we're at a moment where people need this data anyway. So I don't know, like I'm still struggling with thinking about like how to submit a proposal when this data is not being captured, not going to be included in the P20W data set. So any ideas would be like super helpful, right? To kind of think about like, well, how do we continue this work? And in the past, in my own work, because the data didn't exist, we collected it ourselves. And so we, like, for example, I worked on a project where we collected data with about 15% of the student population, undocumented student population at each of the UC systems, but it would have been amazing to have something already collected, right? So I'm still, very, very much struggling to think about like how do we support undocumented youth in such a critical time when so much immigration enforcement is happening, when students might continue to be discouraged from even applying to any college, right? Even in California, which we know that California has been kind of like leading in terms of policies. And so I'm just worried that we're going to go backwards in the next few years if we don't do anything to kind of address these experiences. So it's not really like I don't have a solution because I don't really know how to do it, but I would love to continue working with folks to kind of continue kind of thinking about how we could do this kind of work in the coming years.
Wonderful. Member Shack, please, followed by Member Gottlieb.
Member Shack speaking. I really appreciate all the ideas people have already expressed. I think there's really everything that has been said has been promising, and I just wanted mention a few of the ideas I'm interested in. I would agree with others that the College Promise public proposal really caught my eye. So I second that. Also, I do think homelessness is an important area to the extent there's data available. But for me, I think the top for me is the CANS data that I asked about earlier. And I just wanted to add a few points that were from the really helpful responses we had on that topic. That the assessment, it has 60 plus questions items that relate to behavioral health, but also areas that are kind of adjacent to that. And that it can include residential stability, but also, thinking about undocumented, maybe areas, there are a few questions that relate to areas that might be impacted by that, not an explicit question. There's school attendance, school behavior, and then also a whole bunch of questions about behavioral and emotional health. And so you could potentially link that in with educational data and really see how the two things how they're related to each other, how behavioral health can contribute to improved outcomes. And the last thing I just want to say is that we found out today that each year there's about 200,000 assessments completed. It's in fact mandated not just for foster care, but for anything under Medi-Cal or any behavioral health service that's provided by the county. So it's a pretty good chunk of students, and it's the people we care about most because it's people in foster care, justice involved, as well as people receiving Medi-Cal, and who are receiving trauma-informed care. So that's probably the top of my list, and I would love to hear if others are interested in collaborating on that as well.
Thank you. If folks can also feel free to use emojis if you want to do a thumbs up or that way too. Let's proceed with Member Gottlieb, and then I've seen 3 hands come up. That might be where we end our session, but let's see. Member Gottlieb, please.
Thanks, Adam Gottlieb, Community Engagement. The thinking about some of these concepts have been brought up. Calling one of them, Member Watson's take on really college access and pathways is really making me think about the new master plan for career education with numerous standouts in one, collectible data, analyzable data, and things that we should be really tracking to make sure that it's effective and that the newly proposed and somewhat funded interagency council will be looking at. I know that the C2C office has some work to do regarding the career passport, possibly also credit for prior learning in partnership with the community college system. But I do think there are a number of factors that we should be looking at in terms of what data points and how we're actually engaging with those data points, how we're engaging with our policymakers and our advocates in implementing the master plan that would be helpful for this group to explore. So that's something that I was thinking about. I think I threw out a question earlier to Mary Kate about that. So that's probably what I'll be tracking. But John, I think your higher ed pathways is like the right place to start with that.
Thank you, thank you. And in terms of order of hands, I saw Catanzarite first, followed by Ortiz Villar, followed by Fong, please.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Member Catanzarite, Data and Tools Advisory Board. I have 2 comments. One is I really appreciate the effort with the affinity mapping to help us connect better. I would love to encourage another type of mapping that asks not just like who we represent, but which areas of interest we have for potential future proposals. So those overlap, but they're not the same thing. So I think that would be really helpful. And then my other comment, I just wanted to echo some of what Daniel shared. It is disturbing not to be able to track immigrant students in general, undocumented, another element of that. On the Workforce Data Task Force, we, for a moment, had a glimmer that we might be able to get census data, which do contain information on immigrant status, not undocumented, not legal status, but whether someone is an immigrant. Hope was dashed when we found out we couldn't get that level of data from census. So I guess my question is, what do we have for proxies right now? And my understanding, so I'm asking Ryan, my understanding is that the only thing we really have is LPAC, is the English language proficiency in the K-12 data. And then I also wonder, when we get data from CSAC, do we get separate data for DREAM Act applications separate from FAFSA?
No, my understanding is we do not receive that distinction from CSAC.
And would it be possible? Do you know?
In terms of the underlying data that they have, yes, I believe so. But in terms of how it would come our way, I think that's a longer conversation. But the data, I mean, if the question is, do the data exist? My understanding is, yeah, it does exist.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few last comments. So kind of to build on this is member Ortiz Villar on DTAB. To build on Lisa's comment, just thinking about like other proxies. I know for our organization, we think about Pell Grant eligibility, and so some of our immigrant or documented students might be Pell Grant eligible based on their income, but we know they're not eligible based on their status. And so, just wondering like if there's other proxies that we can use to include that data. And yeah, I just want to echo member Milan's idea. Like I've also been kind of simmering with this since our last meeting and that discussion that we had in person, and wondering if there's something around like workforce data that can also either point us in the direction of somebody being an entrepreneur because they're undocumented or something like that. So I wonder if there's like just thinking about like other avenues that we can try to get some sort of information on our immigrant communities. If it's not through actual like legal status in the schools or the financial aid system, is there something there on the workforce side that we can maybe explore? So yeah, happy to thought partner with folks if we want to think through that more. And just want to again affirm that I really want to sponsor this College Promise one. So just want to throw that out there if folks want to collaborate on that one as well.
This is member Fong, member Ortiz Vilar. I'm happy to work with you on the College Promise one. That is very interesting to me and very aligned with the work that I'm currently kind of doing. I actually have a few thoughts and things just like gathering. So sorry, this is probably broad and not going to be anything that might picked up because I'm not quite sure, still formulating. I wanted to piggyback off of what Ortiz Villar just said around entrepreneurship as a pathway for students. And I'm not sure if that in the labor and workforce data that is fully captured that we just received. And so finding, I don't know what that data point is or how to get that yet. Maybe it's like small business kind of accounts that are opened up, something like that is kind of bubbling up in my brain. I do want to hark to early childhood too. So like really try to bring the cradle back, particularly around, I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert in this, but I am very interested in like independent home childcare programs. I'm just around them a lot and where that data and how those students are tracked and where that's reported. I just don't know how we track all those students. And so it's more of a curiosity that is bubbling up to see and really identify where they all are. And I wonder if there's a way for us to find ways to track that through some of the teacher training or certification routes that will route people to be placed in home daycares or daycare centers. So, or even home daycares. Yeah. So there's something there that I wanted to see, yes, like a blend of some of the proposal that we already see, but also going to the early childhood data elements too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I can see that maybe after this meeting, I think conversations may continue and we can make some connections. I know we're rounding the end of our time here, but I'd love to just make the offer. Should you be interested in something specific, feel free to reach out to myself and we could get you connected with other folks. So just because it wasn't said today or now does not mean that the door closes. I think that this is just the start. Member Hosravi, could you make a quick comment so that we could round out this section, please?
Absolutely, Mary Kate. And the only comment that I have is with reflections on what everybody else has been sharing. There's a lot of appetite in gathering data so we can support immigrant communities from this body. But equally important, perhaps even more important at this time, is data privacy for immigrant populations because of the climate of the country that we're living in. So frankly, for me at this point, that sort of supersedes any need to gauge a better understanding of the disaggregated data of immigrant populations and communities. So I would just err on the side of caution as we ask any agencies, whether CSAC, whether institutions, whether any partners, to provide us with disaggregated data because those are all public. And even if they have the capacity to, I would not at this point want to ask for those kinds of data.
Thank you. Thank you for voicing that and sharing your opinion. I appreciate that. There was a lot of really good thoughts and comments here. I really, really appreciate everybody sharing. I think that that was really great. And again, this is a good start. So I'd love to close this agenda item in this section here, if there's no issue with that. Let's do something quick. Let's move to agenda item 4, which I'll give a really, really super duper quick update on selection for advisory boards. I know members received an update related to this earlier today. So as y'all know, we had the meeting. Y'all last met in March and were provided an update. There was a committee that convened, including 5 members, Member Gonzalez Vasquez, who was our chair, members Jez, Nellam, thank you again, Member Nellam, Sullivan and Vu also were on this committee, and they are the folks that finalize the selection and recruitment of materials to identify and help us work through that candidate pool that we get for the new folks that are going to be joining y'all in the new cohort. So the next slide takes us through some past milestones. We had a wonderful community conversation and 2 committee meetings. We did receive a super healthy applicant pool, which we'll start to look at on the next slide. So for data and tools, we received a total of 37 applications, and this shows you the breakdown of the applicant buckets or categories that we received. And we only have 6 vacancies. So highly super competitive process. Let's take a look at community engagement. We received a total of 56 applications, again, for 6 seats. These committee members had very tough decisions in front of them. So what's going to happen next in this process is, if we look at the next slide, our governing board will meet on August 15th, and then they will take a look at who the final appointments will be. If you wanted to see a preview of that, we could do so quickly right now. So for data and tools, and again, this is not confirmed or final information, but the folks that are being recommended for appointment on data and tools are Cameron Schmidt-Temple from UC Berkeley Center of Educational Partnerships, Renee Mahata from Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce, Converse, I'm thinking about shoes. Ritu Khanna from San Francisco Unified School District, Viviana Unda from El Camino College, Tina Chuck from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, Winnie Yi from the University of California, Irvine, and then 6 potential runners up would include, we would now go into community engagement and who those recommended folks look like. While we're getting that teed up. Perfect. The 6 potentials are Vincent Rasso from the University of California Student Association, Omar Butler from New Door Ventures, Danielle Carmison from Ferndale Unified School District, Abby Gratledge from Cal Poly Humboldt, Juliet Maestas from Red Sky Education, and Duria Ahmed from the University of California Student Association. So again, all of this will be final for our August governing board meeting. Governing board members do have the final thought here, but very excited. We have potential new contact with new populations, new regions represented. So it will be very exciting to see what the future holds. If folks have any questions, comments, or concerns on this part, I'd be happy to open it up here. Again, I held to my promise of a very, very quick presentation, but I can pause for a moment. Hearing nothing, which means I just was very clear in my presentation. Thank you. What I'd love to do next, and it's a great honor, have gotten to the point in the year where this is our last meeting for folks. So I really, really want to say thank you to our Data and Tools Advisory Board members who will be concluding their term in August. So you see really familiar faces here on the screen. This includes Jason Borgen, Tamika Connor, Reagan Faust, Heather Huff, Laura Owen, and Vikash Reddy. So during your tenure as Data Tools Advisory Board members, y'all played a really key role in providing feedback on the Student Pathways dashboard. You engaged in the data and tools proposal process. You were our guinea pigs, the first ones that did it. Your proposals touched on A through G course sequences offered and attempted, multilingual learners, in-school and at-home digital access. So a really big thank you. It's the first time that you are the folks that have gotten 3-year terms. So first time we're getting through the full cycle of our first round of appointments. And this too is true for our Community Engagement Advisory Board members who will also be concluding their term. And that includes Michelle Chang, Parshan Hosravi, Orquídea Largo, Jackie Navarez, Lisa Rodriguez, and Spade Viveras Walton. During your time on this advisory board, you played an important role in community engagement efforts, and you engaged as well in this proposal process. Your proposals touched on advancing collective understanding of workforce development and career-connected learning, and expanding annual community outreach efforts. So you've made a wonderful, lasting impression. And I would just like to highlight these folks. You were our first cohort. I know I've already said that, but thank you all for your flexibility, your ideation, and just really coming with your positive attitude. You played such an important role in shaping our advisory boards. And for that, I'd like to give you, as much appreciation and gratitude as I can in this moment. And if folks want to, yeah, exactly. Join me in a round of applause. I'm unmuted, so I'm the single clapper, which is crickets. That's okay. I saw Diana. Thank you for joining me.
There's no emote. We can't emote as panelists. So yay.
Yay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And what I'd like to do is we have these folks on the line. You're departing. This is your time. I'm in a pause now. Please feel free to come together. Share any reflections you may have for us. And then at the end, what I'd like to do is have members that are not leaving turn off your camera so that we could take a one final photo of our members that are leaving.
I just want to say, this is Member Connor, that it has been a pleasure watching the evolution and participating in the evolution of Cradle-to-Career. You guys have done some amazing work, and under the last 3 years, we saw from a concept to actual implementation and launch of our first website with our data presented. And there's a lot of conversations that went behind the scenes. I want to thank Kathy Booth as well from West Ed, and all the leadership around our researchers really helping to guide us and make this a interesting opportunity as they answered all of our questions and really engaged us in our curiosity around how our data is going to be represented across the state, across different sectors of higher education, including higher education and post-secondary. So thank you.
And I'll add a gratitude to the mix. I want to thank my fellow advisory board members who taught me quite a bit about quite a range of topics. So I appreciate you all for that. I want to thank the C2C staff and leadership. I think you guys are doing incredible work that really will build a brighter future for California's children, students, families, and I think one that will spill over and have impacts and effects on children across the nation. So just thank you for letting me be part of this and participate. And you haven't heard the last of me. I will be in the public comments on the research request process because I think you all imagine I have some thoughts there and maybe even a vested interest as someone who might want to work with these data more granularly myself. So thank you very much.
Member Owen here, and I just would like to kind of ditto to Member Reddy and Member Connor. It really has been an honor. I feel like I came into this really thinking we were going to get to this next part we're going to talk about this afternoon on the researcher piece. So I'm with you, Member Reddy. I'm not going to be gone either. I was really excited for that, and hopefully can continue to be a voice and a face in a different space with that process. But I just want to thank everyone. I feel like I learned so much from the others that are on the advisory board, and really to the C2C staff. My goodness, like I've just been blown away by what you've done, coming in and realizing what a monumental task this was, but seeing where you are in the 3 years, what a gift to actually be part of, maybe helping to start some of the processes and put some of the structure in place that was needed. But just to watch what's happened in the last 3 years, it's pretty amazing. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity. I feel like I myself grew a lot and learned a lot from all of you, and just appreciate the opportunity to be part of it.
Yeah, ditto times four. I think lots of great opportunities. Again, a very humbling experience for me as a local practitioner here to meet with researchers, meet with higher ed advisory board colleagues, as well as folks from the community engagement team as well. So just an amazing, humbling experience for me. And appreciate the opportunity to learn with all of you all about all the data sets, the P20W, and kind of helping build our expertise locally here. Also, again, you create another advocate for C2C here in Santa Cruz County, so we appreciate that. And again, I know it's a lot of work on staff's part, and its staff is really, really highly intellectual and really supportive and personable. So I can't thank enough, specifically Mary Kate and Stephanie, all the work they did to kind of herd us in. So thanks.
Member Largo, good afternoon. I just want to express my appreciation for allowing me to represent the Central Valley. It has been a very humbling experience. I so appreciate the collective effort and the content expertise and the opportunity to learn from my fellow advisory board members. I look forward to the amazing work that is to come in the coming years, and hopefully this effort results in being able to address the needs of our students in real time, going beyond just the collection of data, but being able to address their needs as they're being identified and called this moral call of to address their needs in the moment. So thank you again, very humbling, and best of luck as you move forward with this effort.
And Member Khosravi here, a lot of what I was going to say was already shared by everybody else, similar sentiments. What an honor to be in this space and be able to take part in the work that is happening, and can't wait to see what this body continues to do moving forward. The power is in our hands, and we're doing great work, and I'm proud of it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Member Chang here. I want to also double click on everyone's sentiments. I'm very grateful and thankful to be part of this wonderful work. I think about my experience 20 years ago, saying I wish we had a program or a dashboard or data that can really help us see the experience and understand our community members, and think about how we continue to improve our own work, to ensure that our California residents are getting the most high quality services and opportunities that can really support economic mobility and access for our young people and for all California residents. So really thankful for the C2C office. I cannot believe it's been 3 years already, but I'm so happy to see that we have a dashboard and that we continue to improve and really think about our community experience and ensure that everybody is really represented in the work that we do. So thank you, C2C office. Thank you to all members, and excited to continue seeing the work. And as you all mentioned earlier, we all have the C2C champions here, and we'll continue to move the work forward as we think about really representing everybody's experience and ensuring access and opportunity for all Californians.
This is Reagan Faust at the Children's Data Network on the DTAB advisory board, and I just wanted to second everything that has been said before me. I couldn't have said it better myself. I did want to add that it feels like a huge honor to be part of the brain trust that has been developed over these past 3 years, and it is really heartening to know that it's just going to expand. And to have been and played a small role in this work is something that I will be forever proud of. And it also makes me very proud of my state as well, especially in this moment in time. California is out in front, continuing to do the work. It's good data, good governance, and really creating impact for our students. It's been an honor. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for all those remarks. You can feel the warmth. I can feel the warmth. I'll use I statements. So what I'd like to do, I don't want to rush anybody if there's other folks that wanted to comment, but what I'd love to do at this time is if you're a member that's leaving, please keep your camera on. If you're a member that's staying, please turn your camera off so we could get a group photo of these folks. And Angelique, thank you for helping us with this virtual photo.
All right, y'all. Ready for this? Give me 1 second. 3, 2, 1. We'll do one more. All right, hold your pose. 1, 2, 3. All right, got it. Thank you.
Love it. I also love how everybody just smiles started to appear. That was lovely. Wonderful. Okay, so I don't want to cut this short. If there's any folks that aren't leaving that would like to make some remarks, y'all can pipe up too. That's okay. We have another moment. Okay. Hearing none, can I actually have folks a coordinated effort to come off mute, and can we just have like one nice round of applause so it's not dinky? All right. Thank you. That filled my bucket. Thank you all. Okay, so what I'd love to do at this time, we're ending on a wonderful celebratory note. Let's take a How about a 15-minute break? So I'll see folks back here at 12:35, and then we'll jump right into agenda item 5. 12:35. Thank you all. Members can go off camera. Thank you so much. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the approval of the Data and Tools Advisory Board consent calendar. So matters on the consent calendar are routine in nature. They're approved by a single vote. Prior to the action by the Data and Tools Advisory Board, members in the public will be given the opportunity to remove any item from the consent calendar. And items removed from the consent calendar may be heard immediately following approval of the consent calendar or be set aside until a later date. So we have 2 items in front of us. They're listed on this slide. We have meeting minutes and the 2026 dates. Can I have any member, would you like to remove an item? Hearing no objections, can I get a motion to approve?
I would like to move to approve the consent calendar.
Brilliant. I have a motion for Member Ready. Can I have a second?
Member Gamboa is second.
Wonderful. Thank you, Member Gamboa. I will take that on agenda item 6. I have to do data and tools separate from community engagement. But brilliant.
Member
Sorry.
Owen, I second.
Fabulous. Member Owen, we got you down for our second. Okay, let's pause. We'll open it up for public comment, and I will look to Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez to lead us through this. Thank you.
Yeah, for members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this agenda item. I'm confirming that we have no folks at the C2C office wishing to comment. Pausing. Seeing no raised hands, I will close public comment at this time. I'd like to ask my colleague, Sophia Aguilar, to proceed to slide 56, please.
Perfect. And then voicing over, we have a motion and a second on the table. Thank you, members Reddy and Owen, for that. And then I'd like to ask Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez to lead us through that roll call. Thank you.
Yeah, Member Borgen,
Aye.
Member Catanzarite,
Present.
Member Connor,
Present.
Member Faust, Member Harlech, Member Huff, Member Milan,
Present.
Member Norris,
Aye.
Member Ortiz Villar,
Aye.
Member Owen,
Aye.
Member Fong,
Yes.
Member Reddy,
Aye.
Member Reed, Member Sheck,
Yes.
Member Tarasova,
Aye.
Member Watson.
Aye.
For the clarity of the record, we have 12 ayes.
Wonderful. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Members, please mark your calendars accordingly. We now have the 2026 dates that can be anticipated, and we'll get those approved meeting minutes to our website shortly. Brilliant. Let's move on to agenda item 6, which is the approval of Community Engagement Advisory Board consent calendar, which will look very similarly. So if we can move to the next slide. The items in front of us for vote are noted on this slide. And again, should a member like to remove this or anyone from the public, we are asking that you say so currently. Hearing no objections, let's move forward with the item. So I'm looking for a motion to approve of the 2026 dates, as well as the last set of meeting minutes.
Member Takagi, I'm approving the community engagement consent calendar as presented and the meeting minutes.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And Member Gamboa approving, seconding the motion. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I have Member Takagi with a motion. I have Member Gamboa with a second. And I would ask Stephanie to now please open it up for public comment. Thank you.
Yes, confirming that we have no one in the room in Sacramento that would like to comment. On Zoom, if you wish to comment, please raise your hand at this time. Okay, seeing no raised hands, I will close public comment at this time. I'd like to ask my colleague Sofia Aguilar to please proceed to slide 63.
As we're getting that teed up, reminder here, I'll be asking Stephanie to do a roll call vote. And we have a motion from member Takagi, a second from member Gamboa for approval of this consent calendar item. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Chang,
Aye.
Member Countryman Quiros,
Present.
Member Gamboa,
Present.
Member Gonzalez, Member Gottlieb,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Jones, Member Khoshavi,
Aye.
Member Largo,
Aye.
Member Lopez Valdez,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Navarez, Member Nguyen,
Aye.
Member Rodriguez, Member Takagi,
Aye.
Member Viveros Walton. For the clarity of the record, we have 11 ayes.
Fabulous. The motion passes. Thank you. Community engagement folks, please also mark your calendars for your next set of meeting dates. What I'd like to do now is bring us to agenda item number 7. This is an engagement item. I'm really excited for it, and I'd really love to pass it off to Ryan Estrellado, our Director of Data Programs, who will present this item. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the next item. This is item number 7 on the research request process. Again, my name is Ryan Estrellado. I'm the Director of Data Programs, and I'll be sharing this item with you today. First off, special thanks to our research manager, Dr. David Lang, who's a project lead on developing C2C's research request process. And who helped prepare this item for me to share with you today. We'll start with some background. The goal of this agenda item is to refamiliarize the advisory boards and also the public with the research request tool project, which I thought would be helpful because we've started to work on the Secure Data Enclave, which is the technology side in the secure compute environment that will support the research request process. And so I'd like to do this in 2 parts. First, some general background about how the research request tool was conceptualized during the 18-month planning process before the office started. And then second, I'd like to share about the roles of the office, the governing board, and both the advisory boards, and then also the data providers in the running of the research request process once it's built and in preparation for its launch. Recall first that the statute requires the office to create a research request process. And this is meant to be for use by researchers, policymakers, and other audiences. And the process was first described in Cradle-to-Career's planning process back in 2020. We've linked a document for you to look at below in the bullet on the last slide. And continuing on with background on the research request process, it was originally imagined in 3 parts during the planning process. In contrast with the dashboards, which guide the audience with pre-selected research questions, the research request process will instead empower the audience to explore data with their own research questions. And in the vision of this process during the planning period, the most accessible tier is through the query builder. And this will be a publicly available tool that will provide aggregated data extracts to any public user. But when we think of the research request tool and the concept of it, what we're really talking about is the next tier of service and tooling, which is an expedited data request that will provide custom aggregated data extracts. And then the final and the most specific is the comprehensive data request process. And this will allow researchers to request individual level data from the P20W data system. And then pending approval from data providers, will then be able to use that individual level data for research. Of course, depending on the use of personally identifiable information in the request, note that comprehensive data requests may also require an institution review board approval. So when we think of using the P20W dataset for research purposes in general, we're looking at a continuum of use here, starting with the query builder, which will give aggregated data, and then flowing to the most individual level and sort of process heavy types of research requests, which is the individual comprehensive research request process. So now we'll talk about the different roles that the governance manual outlines for different parties as the research request process is being developed and then after its launch. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll start first with the office. The office is responsible for establishing processes and the infrastructure that make the research request possible. And so you see some examples on this slide, with the first being establishing a process for the requests themselves. Second example, developing legally compliant frameworks and formats that meet the computational needs of researchers who are requesting data. And then third example on the slide is coordinating meetings whenever data providers need to discuss requests. We have some other examples on this slide here. Establishing, we can go to the next one to continue. There you go. Thank you. Establishing ways to access reports resulting from the research requests, providing regular updates on the kinds of research requests received and their fulfillment, and then also identifying options for a data request fee policy that we can present to the governing board to consider. So those are the roles of the office, and I'll next share about the role of the governing board in the research request process. The office will present information and recommendations for the governing board to discuss and take action on. And some of these examples include, first, procedures and options for accessing the data system. Second, which data points will be available through the research request process. Next, how requests and their statuses are documented. And then finally, a data request fee policy for researchers who use the data system for the expedited and comprehensive data requests. So connecting the dots here, the query builder are publicly available and won't be subject to data request fees. But the other two, which are more process intensive, are the ones that are open to discussion for that kind of process. So that's the office, the governing board, and now the role of the data providers. Data providers will be responsible for reviewing and determining permission for research requests. Note also that the data providers can submit research requests themselves to fulfill business use case proposals or other types of data sharing as described in their master data exchange agreement. This is a separate process, different from what we think of as the public research request process. But I raise it here to help us connect the dots about how all of this will work together, because the data provider request system will use the same secure compute environment. So it's connected, though happens through a separate legal agreement. And then finally, and most relevant to our conversation today, the role of both of the advisory boards, data and tools, and also community engagement. And we'll start with data and tools. The Data and Tools Advisory Board will be responsible for reviewing the research request process after it has been implemented for a year. And then each year after, the Data and Tools Advisory Board will review approved and denied requests from the previous year and opportunities for improvements to the process. Here's the role of the Community Engagement Advisory Board. The CEAB will be responsible for reviewing the research request process to ensure that the research request process is creating strong feedback loops with data users and also supporting equitable access to the information involved. So those are the roles. I've talked about the general concept, the roles of the different parties involved as we develop the research request process and then also after it's launched. And now I'll just give a quick update about where we are at with the process. The office is actively identifying solutions for a secure compute enclave and developing the required infrastructure to handle the anticipated research request volume. Each step along the way, the office is incorporating transparency and open science practices into the research request process and its downstream products. And so you can expect more conversation and exploration of open science principles in the way that we launch this system. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the action item part of this agenda item. Now that you can better imagine what the research request will look like, at least in concept, I'd like to share the first draft of the kinds of questions that we propose requesters will have to answer as part of submitting their research request to the office. We're proposing 6 questions. They'll be on the slide that you see in front of you, but they're also in your staff report for agenda item 7 if you would like to reference them there. I'd like to share about why I think this part of the agenda item and conversation is important. The advisory boards play a key role in analyzing the patterns and requests that the office receives so that they can help us improve. And so by asking the right questions on our request form, we can collect the kinds of information that not only make for good requests, but then secondarily also give you, the advisory boards, the information that you need to analyze and make recommendations for how we can improve. So for now, I invite you to listen as I review them, these questions, and then to reflect on how well these questions will help you advise us on future improvements to the research process. Okay, so I'll read through these now. Again, these are a draft. These are just proposed questions meant to put in front of you to share with you our initial ideas, but then also to spark conversation so that we can further develop. Question number 1, what is the population of interest in your study? 2, what is the type of analysis planned? Third question, does the proposed research focus on a particular subpopulation? Question 4, does this work focus on specific geographic areas or regions? Proposed research form question 5, which of the following best describes the sponsor of the request? And then finally, what type of project will this request support? Okay, you have those questions on your staff report for further reference as we discuss, but also in the spirit of shifting our advisory board and governing board meetings to focus on more conversation. We are providing a couple of discussion prompts here, which you can choose to use if you'd like. I'll read those. The first is, what additional questions would you like to ask of users who submit research requests to the data system? And then the second prompt, how can these questions be modified to aid your periodic review of the research request? So to summarize, you've got a list of the proposed questions that will go on the form. These, just to be clear, would be questions. If these ended up being the questions, they would be the ones that research requesters would have to complete in order to submit their request. And then after that request is submitted, a collection of those requests would be put in front of the advisory boards to review, to be able to detect patterns that you can help identify for us, and then make recommendations for improvements to the system. And so now we'll progress to the part where we talk about those questions and your initial reaction about how well those types of questions will both lead to a productive research request experience for our requesters, but also help you guide us on this product going forward. That's my part of the presentation, and I am now happy to receive feedback and answer any questions.
I'm seeing
Yep, go ahead.
here, if helpful. So I saw members Takagi and then Fong and then Countryman and then Johnson. So let's start with those four. And Takagi, please kick us off.
Hi, Member Takagi here. I'm the Basic Needs Coordinator at Santa Clara University, and I'm a Community Engagement Advisory Board member. Again, Ryan, thank you for the comprehensive work that you've done to develop this, and just the team for doing this. This takes a lot of work and coordination, so I just want to honor that and express gratitude for that. One question that I had, or I have some questions, but I'll try and wrap it up. Will there be like an FAQ developed or any materials outlining what types of requests will be accepted and or the timeline that they'll be getting the data, just so we can do some expectation setting? I think, again, as we're launching these tools, it's really good to be mindful for like C2C's representation and reputation, that we're doing some expectation setting with our users. And then for question 6, I was wondering if it is a grant-funded research project, if C2C has the power to then request any deliverables, any materials that they've published using the C2C data, just so we have that information. And then lastly, one question that I really wanted to include, I think it'd be really empowering to include a question that relates to C2C's mission and vision. So how does the proposed research or data align with C2C's mission and expand access to actionable data in practice?
Thank you for those questions. Let me start with the grant request question. So the question is, if the research is connected to the grant, is the office in a position to request specific deliverables? That's a question. Okay. So generally speaking, the vision here is that the office is a neutral entity that facilitates the research request. Now, what we're talking about here is the second and third tiers of the research request system. So this is like the expedited one, that's aggregated data, and then the individual level data. In that way, we won't be, or the office won't be in a position to dictate particular deliverables that'll be included within the research request itself. But I will say that there has been a lot of focus and desire on the part of the office to build something like a research library that houses the studies, both as a demonstration of how the data can best be used, but also as a way to connect researchers with both existing work and also each other. And I'll also share that it's been a really high priority for the office to operate this research request tool and design it around open science principles, and being as transparent as possible about the way data sets are cut, and making that information available. And so in that sense, those are the kinds of deliverables that we want to ensure we're able to make available to the public. But outside of that, to my knowledge, the vision is not that we would dictate the deliverable of the research project itself.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Noted about your question or your suggestion for a question relating to C2C's mission and vision. That's a good note. And then please remind me of your first question.
I was just wondering if there would be like an FAQ, or just like to not like just what may be like an appropriate versus an inappropriate data request, or just like expectations around timeline. So I put in the request, what are the next steps afterwards, and things like that.
So we haven't gotten to that part of the process where we would develop how we would communicate with folks after they've submitted it. but I think it's a really good note. So I've taken note of that for David to look into and think about as he leads the process. And I was actually, for the first part, um, my first reaction is I'm looking forward to having that conversation with the folks here after we've had a year's worth of requests. I think in my experience, we could do a pretty good job about guessing what this will be like, but nothing beats actually receiving the requests and being able to look materially at what's come in. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your expert opinions on what that looks like as a whole, and then using that to develop. So we'll do our best to to give some guidelines, but I'm most interested in what actually comes in and how y'all feel about it.
Great, thank you. I know that was a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Member Fong, please.
Ryan, thank you so much for the thoughtfulness going into this research request. I see that there are questions here, but there's a few questions that I have. One is, for question number one, what is the population of interest in your study? Example, early childhood, K through 12, post-secondary workforce. Are you hoping, maybe this is broader to all the questions too, but like, do you think that's a drop-down question, or is it more open-ended for folks? Because maybe they want to span multiple populations or multiple demographics or multiple regional geographic areas.
I mean, part of the reason why we're presenting this now is because those decisions aren't, they're not set in stone yet. And so I'm more curious about what y'all think that should be. I will say, in talking with David about this, that there are advantages that you probably guess about having a drop-down menu in terms of how well we can collate that and analyze it. Of course, there's always a trade-off, and the trade-off there would be that would inherently put limitations on what could be in there. So I'd love to hear about what y'all think about that.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting. I mean, if you did drop downs, that it would actually force people to choose populations and influence how they think about it versus like clicking two filters or something or two buttons. And then if it is other, like explaining what that is, knowing that they fall into different buckets. That's my opinion about that. Okay, second question is, I'm assuming that you're going to collect like the name or the researcher's name or the PI's names. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Are you also going to be collecting like any affiliation that they might have to a research institution or university or an organization? Is that also going to be in there?
Yes, that's my understanding. Yeah, so this is going to be, would like for us to imagine this as a transparent a process as possible, and as public as is allowable, including and maybe even especially the proposed methods for a project. There's all kinds of great reasons why that needs to be out in the open and not sort of behind, a wall that people can't see.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, there might be a lot of affiliations, that like you can type in something and then something will populate as a drop down. If it already is an established institution, that would be interesting to have as an opportunity there. And then to piggyback off of what our member said right before is maybe there's a click button afterwards where it's like, are you willing to have your research posted in the library? Click yes. Are you willing to be connected with other researchers who might have similar research studies? That also might be an interesting click. So that way you can form community. I don't know. And then the other piece that I think as a question that is missing here is how much funding that their research project might be receiving. I think that would be interesting for us to track as well, to just see like cumulatively how much of this system is actually supporting in the millions, billions, or thousands of dollars that are used for research. And those are my comments and questions.
I really appreciate that. And just to reiterate again, too, that in general, I appreciate all of this feedback because we're trying to build a system that puts you collectively in a good position to be able to analyze how this is going. So giving us information like you both just did is really going to help us tailor it to the kind of system that will help researchers, but then also once we have a year of these in, put you in a position where you can see what you need to see. So thank you, and please keep them coming.
Yeah. And we'll be able to see the ones that do get rejected, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Quick point of order here. If I could actually, I think it would increase engagement if we could pull down the slide deck and see all the members, or ideally more, very helpful, super helpful. So I'm loving that I'm seeing 9 hands raised. And I'm also just wanting to normalize the thought that we're at 1:10 and our meeting would ideally adjourn at 2. I would love to hear everybody's comments. So I would potentially ask, we had next up on deck Johnson, then Countryman, then Watson, then Gamboa, then Milan, then Reddy, and then we also got a few more hands up. We got Nguyen and we got Tarasova. So if folks can maybe try and just do 1 or 2 questions or your 1 or 2 top comments so we could kind of give space for everybody and then see where we're at, because our next agenda item is also an engagement item, and I'd love for you all to hear that and get your engagement there. I'm happy to cut in other places, but trying to be thoughtful to all 32 of you on the line. Okay, Member Johnson, please.
Mine is similar to what was said before. I think if there's going to be drop downs, I think it'd be really helpful for definitions to be provided by C2C, just so it's really clear. I think one that made me think about that was the regions question. A lot of your data providers don't even, count regions the same way or consider regions the same way. So I think, for expectation settings, for your own clarity, it would probably be good for C2C to have some definitions, especially if there's going to be sort of drop downs.
That's a really good note. Thank you.
Countryman, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. I was curious when I saw question number 2, it made me think that, or I realized an assumption. I was coming with the assumption that this is meant to be as sort of open to the public as possible. And to me, these definitions of research types felt like a potential barrier to, more public or maybe student requests for data. And so if this is only for researchers, okay, fine. They know what the differences are between descriptive, predictive, and causal. But beyond that, I think definitions would help. I would also be curious if there was any other type of support available so that any research request could be made.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a good flag, because the examples given there are meant to be examples and not like the list of the types of things that can be submitted. But what I learned from what you just said is that it could be taken that way. And so I'm going to take that feedback back and just know that the intention is that we are not expecting to limit it to only these methods, but inclusive of these methods and many others. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, it's John. I think I'm next. Thanks for the update on all of this and for the other member questions. I have 2 really quick ones. Is there an expectation that requests are always going to be one time? So somebody submits an application for some data, or is it possible, or is it part of the process that there could be something like, I'd like to get data over 3 years first, and then updated for 2 more years, something like that. So, and let me just ask the second question as well, because I think they're related. Is there an anticipated timing for the request process initial release? I mean, is it going to happen while we're members? Is it planned? I don't know what the timeline is.
Yep. Let me start with that one. I do not have a timeline yet, but what I can say is the work on this has been happening for a few months now. It's pretty active. I appreciate all the thanks from y'all about this item, but really I have to give credit to our research manager, David Lang, who is coordinating, we call it the research request process. In reality, it's about 6 or 7 separate projects, including agreements, the infrastructure, and then the process itself, and a few others. And so We're moving on this as quickly as we can. It's really active right now. And when we have a timeline ready that we can share, you will be one of the first to know for sure. And then your first question. Okay, yes. So I think both of those are possible. I think one thing to note here is that on the most sort of like process heavy end, the comprehensive individual request, that those requests are subject to the agreement from data providers. And so a lot of whether or not this repeating or sort of one time, I imagine would be considered case by case. And would need approval from the data providers. So that's something important to know that is different from, for example, like the query builder, which would just be available to everybody.
Thank you. If we can continue with members Gamboa, Milan, and then Reddy, please.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments as well. I just wanted to ask really quick again, same thing, which was, will there be like a portal between research and community access? And if we can make that distinction, also would be really interesting to know like how the data is going to further, hopefully, whatever they're trying to do. And then also wondering, how will the data be shared? Are we doing files? Are we going to do Snowflake? What's that process going to look like for the endpoint?
Yeah, so let me address the last question first. There's still a lot for us to determine and decide on about how the data will be shared, but we do know a few things. We know that individual level data will never leave the system. That's just for a whole lot of reasons, I'm sure y'all understand. And so when you hear us use the phrase secure data enclave, what that means is that there will be a system and related technologies that allow researchers to do their work within that system securely such that it doesn't ever leave. And so we know that the vision for this system will always meet that criteria. How it's done, I think, is still we're still in the process of figuring that out. And again, open to feedback about the type of experience that y'all think would be good for researchers, given the constraint of not having identified information leave the system. Of course, it's different for aggregated data. There's a little bit more flexibility there. And remind me of your first question again, please.
Was making a distinction between accessing the portal as a researcher, as a think tank person versus like a community member of a nonprofit, for example.
Yeah. If the question is about the ability of either of those parties to make a research request, it's not a distinction that we're making. You don't have to be, I'll just use as an example, a university affiliated researcher to make a research request. All of the requests are subject to the same kinds of processes. I mean, I think one thing will probably almost certainly be part of the process is some guidance from the office about how to most efficiently get data. I think some data requests can be efficiently met through the query builder. Not everything I think has to be an individual request. And I think that's going to be just some learning together that we have with the community, because we expect the individual level data request to be pretty process heavy, as it should be for all the reasons you might expect. And so we'd like to encourage folks to reserve that for only when it's needed, and use the other two to get data faster if that would meet the need of the researcher. But I think ultimately we're not making the distinction between a sort of a community member or sort of like a university related researcher who are making these requests. And then the availability of the results in the research library would of course be completely publicly available, along with anything that we make available through our focus on open science, including methods and anything like that.
Member Milan, please.
Yes, thank you. Member Mian for Data Tools Advisory Board. So definitely want to echo the point of just having like maybe it could be like a second part to question number 6 around like the broader implications. And this is these are things that folks would need to work on for IRB and grant proposals anyway. So I don't think it's like a huge lift, but it would be interesting to kind of know why people are requesting this data. And my second one, I think you answered it already, Ryan. Just kind of curious if there's like policies or guidelines around like the use of generative AI. Like if it's good to be skeptical and kind of think about like we can't control if folks are going to be using these tools and they can be helpful. Maybe I'm more of a skeptic still, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about that too. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, that's a conversation we're taking really slowly. What I can say for sure is anything that flows through the data system will almost certainly adhere to the guidelines set by the state government on generative AI. That itself is a rightfully, I think, slow and deliberate conversation. And so we'll be leaning a lot on the advice from other agencies and the administration on how to best use that. But that's a topic that we're aware of, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it's just another signal to us that it's something that we need to pay attention to.
Member Ready, please.
Two things on my mind. I share the desires that this be like a very open, transparent, accessible system. But I'm also highly cognizant that there is individual level data coming in these requests, right? And that even if we're keeping PII out of transferred files, if you've got a small cell size, we all, researchers have this has been drilled into us. So I would still love to know, like, is there going to be, I mean, I was required to get was it city certification before I ever touched any data anywhere on campus, right? And so are there sort of any checks there around like this person is, given all of what we know, can be trusted with data or should have data? And so that's one question. I think the second question is sort of connected, which is, even data and tools advisory board members who have been reading the code books and swimming in data in these data points for, I've been doing it for 3 years, and you still have to correct me on, well, that's not how that variable is operationalized, or that's not actually what that's measuring. And so I think about some of the most successful projects that I've had as a researcher, and they've included this ability to, I think, I've had to specify the variables and that I want, which I think I'm not seeing yet, and maybe that's a step further in the process. But the questions here seem like the sort of the top sheet, as it were. And so I think that process of like, what are the variables? How is there some feedback on this is what it is, this is what it isn't? And it comes, I think, with a second step. And it's weird to talk about a publication side of this when you're talking about the application, but I think the most successful ones that I've been a part of, it always feels like a pain when the agency says we need a 30-day review period or whatever it is. But I think C2C really should, and sorry to add work to whoever is going to have to do this, but should be reviewing anything that uses C2C data. It's a double directional thing, right? I've had people say to me, oh no, we had all those conversations up top, but you still got it wrong. And you shouldn't publish it saying that. And here's how you can fix it. It also gives C2C the opportunity to know what's coming and be prepared. So just thoughts. I don't know if those are thoughts or questions or whatever, but I hope they're helpful.
It's really, really, really helpful. I think a lot of that, in particular, the understanding of who the research requesters are and qualifications and stuff like that. I'll pass that note on to the Julia and the sort of the work that's happening around the sort of the legal side of things. I know there's a lot of thought happening there, and I think it's worthwhile to flag that. On the topic of variables and sort of the education on what those variables are, I mean, the role of the office is to facilitate successful use of the data. And I think part of that is going to be having a really good written documentation, but also on some level being available to help make sure that folks are understanding what the variables are. There's still a lot of decisions to be made about what the open science element of this will look like, but I think it's worthwhile to say that there's a real active conversation about the possibility of registering methods and use of variables up front. So that's a possibility. And I say that here not to say that for sure that's going to happen, but I say it to give a sense of how committed we are to making sure that like everything is really clear in the research request. I mean, this is a thing that is important and sensitive enough that, to your point, Vikash, it shouldn't be something that's automatic. It probably should be slow so that we can have the right kinds of conversations about it. And so a lot of that stuff will be required. What that looks like, we're still in the middle of that conversation. And so the more feedback like what you just gave me here, but then also in the future, like the better will be to be able to shape like this first shot at it.
Let's can we do Nguyen, Tarasova, and Harlech, and then we'll close this item out, please.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for spearheading this along with David. I just had two quick questions. First, on the process, is there going to be some kind of public-facing record of fulfilled, pending, and denied data requests?
Yes.
And second, is there going to be a fee policy? I know that it's going to be established by the office, but will it be fair and will it present, maybe financial barriers to researchers or community groups given, the world we live in where there's a lot of loss in the research world?
Yeah, so to the first question, definitely yes. As part of the overall effort to be transparent, all of that will be available and importantly available to you, of course, so that you can help us with the analysis and effort to improve. And then on the second topic, yes, the fee policy, a big part of that conversation is equity in research on our part. And so we're taking that conversation really slowly and thinking really hard about how a fee policy could affect different parties submitting research and trying to think about how to do that fairly. A major sort of element of trying to do this successfully is making sure that folks who haven't had a chance in the past to do the research that they want to, either because of the availability of data or researchers, that they will have a fair shot like anybody else. And so it's something that we're thinking really hard about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the time and the presentation. I wanted to add that potentially it would be a good question to add, such as, will the data be used to explore any specific developmental or educational milestones? Because it would help clarify the focus of the research and the request on the key transitional points in an individual's life, something that we do not have a lot of data at the moment. Based on Mr. Reddy's comment, understanding which milestones the research focuses on and ensures that the right data points are collected. This question will help with that, but also it will give us some insight into what are the main topics that the researchers are interested in and also working on.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm up. So that my few comments in terms of the application kind of relates to members Tarasova comments. I wonder if you might just ask what the research questions are for the study, because that's not listed there, and that I think could encapsulate a number of comments we've heard. Is what are the core research questions for the study? And then in terms of how the analysis works given the secure data enclave environment. I'm just curious about this, and it may reveal my ignorance more than anything else. But so people who analyze data have different preferences for the type of software they use, right? So would a secure data enclave enable people to use whatever software they're most comfortable with somehow? How does that work, right? And then would it be possible to upload local files with student identifiers, right, and do matches with the C2C data set, right? These would be soft matches, but they're relatively rigorous ways to do that. So I would be super interested in doing that kind of work. So just curious about those things.
Those are really great questions. Thank you for asking them. On the topic of tools in the secure data enclave, we're still working on that, but it connects very much to Member Wynn's question about equity and sort of all the different ways that people use tools to analyze data. And what I can say is we want for people to be able to do research with as many of the tools that they're comfortable with. We're going into it with that mindset. what we haven't discovered yet is what the limitations of the technology and the security might be that sort of constrain what people can use. But we know that people use different tools. Some are sort of more frequently used than others. But the aim is to have as much of that available as possible. It's too early, I think, to tell whether or not we'll be able to get there and have anything available, or whether it'll end up being a more limited set of tools, probably for security and privacy reasons, or maybe something in between. But I hope to give some news on that as it develops. And then remind me of your second question, please.
The second question was around in the secure data and enclave environment, could somebody upload local
That's right.
data files in order to match the CSC data set?
Okay. Yeah. So that's a possibility that we're contemplating. It turns out that that is more complicated than we had originally thought it was. And so we have to take that conversation slow, largely to do with policies and procedures, privacy, security, and that type of thing. We are definitely aware of the desire to do that. We could see the value in it for sure. But we're looking into that to see what the impact would be on any number of the factors that I talked about. So just, I think the thing to know now is that we want for that to be a possibility, but we don't yet have news about whether it will be available in the first version.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. There was a lot of really good stuff that just happened. And thanks for Ryan for taking all of those questions and thoughts on the spot. So more to come, members. Will be briefed, and you've given us lots of thoughts. What I'd love to transition now to is our next agenda item, which is another heavy engagement item about phase 1 of the query builder. So I'll pass it back off to Ryan, and we're also going to have Jeff Gold and Shannon Serrato joining us for this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Ryan Estriato, Director of Data Programs. And for this agenda item, I'll be presenting an update on the concept of the first version of the query builder. So just to help connect the dots, in the last agenda item, we talked about the research request tool and all the different ways that data can be used for research, and the query builder was the most accessible sort of public facing one. And so I'll share about the query builder in the context of the other tools. And then Jeff Gold, who's helping our office with the development of the query builder's first version, will share about the work so far and how these initial ideas will be the foundation of future versions of this product. And then in the final part of the agenda item, Shannon Serrato will invite you to discuss and share how we all can work together to make this product meaningful for the California public during this first version, but then also in future versions. So I'll just start with background here. The statute requires that the office build a public educator and researcher facing tool or tools. And this is important because these are the tools that make it possible for the public to access the information that comes from the B20W dataset. And to reach a wide audience with different levels of data use and also different use cases, there are, as you know, 3 kinds of tools. You've seen the first kind already, the dashboards, when we launched the Student Pathway Data Story. And now we'll share the concept for another kind. It's a tool that is referred to in the statute as a query builder. And we envision this to be a natural extension of the guided experience that users will find in the Student Pathway Data Story, and also one that will give the public more choices about the kinds of questions that they can answer as they explore student pathway data. And so with that, I will now pass it to Jeff Gold from Insights to Action to share more about the first version of the query builder. Take it away, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Nice to meet everyone. It's my pleasure to share just a brief update on the development of our new query builder tool. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just start with a point of privilege, maybe my first time presenting here, so I could take it. As someone who came into this work from the outside, I'd like to just share 2 quick observations that have stood out, really impressed me about the C2C team's approach to this work. First, you can see their unwavering commitment to user-centered design in everything they do. What this means, at least from what I've seen on the ground, is that the needs of real users are always front and center in everything that they do and every conversation we have about what to build and how to build it. And secondly, I've been really impressed by the team's willingness to pivot quickly based on that user feedback. So in my experience, that's one of the hardest things for any team to do, not just to listen to users, but to actually make adjustments in real time and to course correct based on those users' needs. So both of these qualities, the ear to the ground and the willingness to pivot, have guided us in making the decision to take a phased approach to launching the Query Builder. And what this really means is that we're starting with the most immediate user need and we're building out from there. So phase one of the Query Builder tool will focus on the need to get student pathways data into the hands of our users, and especially into the hands of our colleagues in the research community who have already been asking us for access to these files since we launched. In many cases, they plan to combine this data, the C2C data from the Student Pathways data story, with their own data sets and explore new insights about how students across the state are navigating their way to and through college. The Query Builder page will provide downloadable flat files for the Student Pathways data story, along with clear documentation and contextual information that will help users make sense of what they're viewing. And I just want to reiterate, we're treating this not as a temporary solution, but really as version one of a larger Query Builder concept, which will serve as the foundation for what we're going to build next. Future versions will include more nuanced data, like the ability to view outcomes by student major. And we're also planning to develop interactive features that let users compare and visualize data directly on the site. So what I mean by that is they won't need to just download a data file. They could certainly do that. But if they'd like to explore the data by putting in some input and clicking submit, they would see a visualization and be able to identify patterns in real time. To wrap things up, this first release is really about meeting users where they are and getting the right data into the hands of the people that have asked for it in the format that they've asked for it. It sets the stage for exciting interactive features ahead, and it positions us to keep evolving the tool based on what we learn to be of most value to our users. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Shannon Serrato, who will share more details about our outreach and engagement plans. Shannon?
Thank you so much, Jeff. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to speak with you all today about our user-centered design and engagement plans for the phase one release of the Query Builder analytical tool. As you just heard from Ryan and Jeff, the Query Builder tool will complement and leverage the Student Pathways data story to make information easier to access and provide a deeper data experience for users interested in exploring the rich information on student and career outcomes for Californians that are already found in the Student Pathways dashboards. And advancing equity and advancing data literacy is a key focus of the data system, as we talked about at length today. So the release of the aggregated files will empower users to delve further into the rich insights to better understand and answer questions about issues that matter to them and their communities. So as part of that release of the second analytical tool, as always, the engagement team will be targeting our user-centered design focus on the needs of the public. So that includes when we do the rollout of the Query Builder, which will incur in phases, making sure that each iteration is informed by user feedback and is tested for accessibility and usefulness before public release. In developing a Query Builder prototype, the initial phase of outreach will prioritize accessibility and determine user needs, along with exploring how communities would like to engage with the tool. So I'm saying this for you all to be thinking about this because we're going to really be probing you all about that in the coming moments. The office will be engaging in user testing this summer with a community conversation planned for late August. So we encourage you all to stay tuned for that and expect the companion collateral materials that will come your way in the coming weeks. And as we will discuss in just a few moments, you all are uniquely positioned to amplify this tool with your networks. And so we'd be glad for your support in the release of the first phase of the Query Builder. Before we turn to you all, however, I would like to invite our governing board liaison to the Community Engagement Advisory Board, Member Nellum, to share his thoughts and reflections on the Query Builder. So I'm going to turn it over quickly to Member Nellum.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I will not take up too much time because I know we're tight on time, and I'm looking forward to folks' reflections and thoughts about the Query Builder. I'll just say I'm really excited about it. You know, I have been a long time a proponent for democratizing data that I believe belongs to the people of this state. And so I'm really excited that the Query Builder is going to allow individuals, community-based organizations, and other Californians the opportunity to engage directly with the data, ask maybe different questions that aren't available on the dashboards, and really just dig in. And I think it will also help local communities better understand questions important to them, and likely will save all of us some time and resources. So I'm thrilled, very much looking forward to this, and have appreciated the overview so far. So I'll pass it back to Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nellum. All right, so here's part where we would like to hear from you. As part of this section of member deliberation, we would be glad for your thoughts on the following questions that were also included in the staff report. As I've noted, you all are particularly qualified to engage with your communities and share information about the Query Builder. So to that end, how can you reach out to your networks to uplift this work? And thinking more broadly about what is the best way to engage with your networks as we think about the release and how we will be communicating this. How can we effectively communicate with your networks about the Query Builder? Again, we are really hoping to leverage the tool to make sure that not only the data wonks and the data nerds have access, which we know everybody wants to touch, see, and feel, but making sure that people who would like to get a deeper understanding of the data and the issues that matter to them that's outside the dashboard is going to be really, really crucial for the office. And so thinking about that group, these data ambassadors, folks who are interested and excited about accessing the data, but not necessarily so steeped in the data now, how can we reach those communities, and what is the best way to communicate this tool to them?
Perfect. I'm seeing hands being raised. I think if we could pull down the slide deck again so we could see folks. And then we'll start in this order. If we could do Member Fong, followed by Member Reddy, Member Takagi, Member Watson, and then Member Ortiz-Villar, please.
Again, thank you all so much. And Jeff, thank you for your presentation. I'm like secretly fangirling over here, so I'm dying a bit. But I just wanted to say that one, at least for the communities that I serve, it would be really helpful if you didn't use the term career builder in any of the communications or like community events because it's not layman's term. It's very kind of data technical behind the scenes versus just talking about what is the interface and what is the tool that the actual community will use. I think that will be really helpful for that communication. And then the other piece obviously is for me, any user coming in, they're going to be looking at like, how does this impact me? And might immediately go to their identity markers to input into the query tool. And so I just want to make sure that as we go to certain networks, just being able to frame that it's like we do have a robust system, but it's not like fully inclusive and that it is still growing. And like if they do see gaps, that there's areas to include more data points, et cetera, as they are like going through and searching through. I think like being able to frame on the front end that if they don't find what it is that they need, that there's an opportunity to still make it great.
Thank you for that.
I'll jump in with mine. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of just as the pathways dashboard came out and how we can help sort of amplify that is just the show don't tell, right? And so as we as advisory board members, if we can get in there and do, it could be a quick blog post, it could be one viz, it could be something that just says, hey, I did this thing. It's not something that, hey, look at what they did, it's look at what I did with this, right? And so I'm delinquent myself, it's on my to-do list to write that blog post. And then but I think to that point, I think sometimes I'm sitting there looking at the dashboard and I'm like, oh, I don't know what, there are too many things, right? And so if there was a list of somewhere of just like quick questions that people had that, could be answered with this, but that you haven't had time for, it's not your job, actually, it's really more the thing, right? I think that could be helpful to then get us to do these little pieces that then could be shared and shown and used as exemplars. So that's my.
Thank you
I
so
love
much
that
for
idea.
that. We are exploring how we can get this in the hands of folks in advance. So member ready, stay tuned.
I'll chime in to save some time, but I want to really echo sentiment similar to Member Fong and Member Reddy as well, to really just avoid jargon when working with different populations, like really meet them where they are and kind of lean into their kind of framework and their kind of work kind of day to day, just really align it with what they're doing on the day to day. Similar to Ready, like more organic engagement, it may be helpful to have advisory members go on LinkedIn or make a blog post and talking about how they're leveraging the data in their own world, whether that's K through 12, higher education, social impact. How are we using the data in our own world to advance our work, to advance equity? I know we are a neutral office, so we're going to be teetering that line, but I think to get some more organic engagement, it's like, how are we going to use the tools when we're interacting with students, when we're advocating for certain policies and things like that. And then I'm also just thinking for professional development or conferences, really just discussing and anchoring on the centering the student impact. So discuss it as a tool that can really translate numbers into stories about student journeys, to really advocate for their students and the populations that they're working with. So I think just really humanizing that and then maybe integrating it into professional development trainings or things like that. I think as an advisory board, we have some connections there to really amplify this work.
I think I'm next. Thanks for this presentation. I began to wonder, I have questions about the continuum between this tool's capabilities, the research requests, and data proposals. And I sort of, in my mind, am trying to compartmentalize. This could be a very powerful tool that could transcend a couple of those other potential uses. So that I'm just wondering about. As far as the information being disseminated, I know in the K-12 environment, there are a number of data-focused networks that are regional or statewide. This would be a really fun topic to bring up. What would be extremely helpful would be to have some practical examples that will resonate in presentations, canned and ready to go. And I think there are plenty of use cases that could be defined and come up with really nice presentations.
I can address the first question just really quickly. And I think one way to look at it is between the query builder, the expedited research request, and then a comprehensive research request. It's really a question of, does the researcher or user need increasing amounts of access to data and the processes related to that? So starting with the query builder, if one's research questions are answerable by the data that's already there, there's literally would be zero process required other than downloading the flat file and then using it. In some cases, that data may not fit the research questions the user has, and so they may need aggregated data still, aggregated and suppressed, but a different data set or combination of data sets that's got a little bit more process to it because now it is a research request, but expedited because it's aggregated. And then the final one where, if a researcher is building a model and aggregated data, for example, is not enough. They need it on the individual level and they need to be in the secure data enclave to build a model. And then that's another process. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a follow-up to that then?
Yes.
So is there a level of granularity difference between the query builder and the research request and then that final research request, which I assume is, yes, there is there.
Yes.
It's still de-identified aggregated data, but the query builder would have a different level of resolution then.
Yeah. Yes, and also maybe whole different domains, depending on where the product is at in its development. Like in the first version, there future versions will have more domains than what is in the first version. That's almost certainly true. And so when domains don't exist, if aggregated and suppressed data still suffices, that may then be a research request at the expedited level.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think I have a few comments, but also questions. I think my first one is around like how do we get our community-based orgs and representing a community-based org, really thinking about folks that we're lucky in my org where we have a data team and I run that data team, but for orgs that don't have a data person, like how are we engaging them to become data-driven? And is that, does that mean making CBO working circles where folks can kind of like think through certain questions together? We're bringing those CBOs together to do some of that work or researching together via the query. The other question I have is, so that's an idea, but the question that I have is, how do we know who's actually accessing both the request form and the query and based on like personal identities? So other than just like entities, like is there a way for us to capture like demographic data of who's actually like using the tools and truly like assessing if this is really going to communities versus like, researchers in ivory tower. So that's something that I would be curious, like if there's a way for us to track that on the website or through the request form, like just demographic questions, even if it was like optional for us to see trends on like who's actually using the data.
I appreciate that, especially as we're thinking about the query builder, because it is planned to be an open page on the C2C website, right? So in theory, anybody can come in and there's at this point no way to know. So building in, as we've done in the student pathways data story, a mechanism for feedback, maybe if it's just like a quick 2-second, I'm this and I'm doing this, that would be really helpful. Not everybody would do it, but I do appreciate the flag now. Because I think that is really important. And I do appreciate the thinking about the CBO. As I mentioned before, these data ambassadors, it's not just the folks who are already working on research, it's the folks who really want to be thinking about it in a different way and become data driven, facilitating data literacy, right? Like that is really a really big, important piece of this work. And so we've been thinking about this from an educator level, from a different project and something else that's coming down the pipe. But the idea of building out the advocacy spaces, creating those networks is something that I really do appreciate you amplifying today. So thank you. Member Shack.
Thank you. I'm Member Shack. The one last thing I would just mention is maybe being aware of what other tools are out there. So you have like the different college segments, you have college scorecard, and engaging, in fact, with those folks, because I have a hypothesis that maybe some of like the internet traffic there's sort of network effects there, where you can sort of drive traffic from one tool between different tools and the other.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other last thoughts? Okay. All right. One more.
I will save my thought for later.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. I know I pushed us through those last two agenda items. We got a lot of feedback. I appreciate the engagement. We're circling home base here. So agenda item 9, this is a familiar item for members. What we'd like to do here is just quickly give some folks that have been super engaged and helpful with the work of the office a shout out. And so I'll start that moment of gratitude here on the next slide, where I'd just like to name and thank both members Fong and members Borgen, as well as members Gottlieb and Chang from Data and Tools and Community Engagement for all of your work. And I'm sure Governing Board Member Liaison Nellam on the line, he already did express gratitude for all your hard work in being the guinea pigs and the first drafters of those reports, and then providing that to the governing board and all of your hard work there. I'd like to pass it over quickly to Angelique Palomar to take us through the next section of thank yous.
Thank you, Mary-Kate. Good afternoon, members. Angelique Palomar, Deputy Director of Communications. Some of the CEAB members may recall from the October 2024 and March 2025 community engagement meeting. I shared upcoming opportunities for members to engage with the office to help drive C2C's mission by increasing awareness of our tools and ensuring that California's diverse communities can understand and use the data. Want to give a huge shout out to Community Engagement Advisory Board members, Mike Nguyen, Alexis Takagi, Marissa Johnson, and Lorenzo Gamboa for stepping up and actively contributing to those goals. Your time and effort have made a meaningful impact. We all know we released in April the first plan dashboard, the Student Pathways Data Story. I want to give the floor to members Nguyen and Takagi, who played key roles in supporting the announcement and the launch event and keeping students' voices at the center of this. So, Mike and Alexis, if I could have you share brief words of how y'all have been collaborating with the office.
I can go first. Thanks so much, Angelique. It's been such a pleasure to work with you and Shannon on the press release with Governor Newsom as well. So it was such an honor to be, quoted alongside him, and of course our executive director, Marianne Bates, and really elevating my story as a student in college. And I hope we can do the same as we are working on an op-ed, hopefully published soon by the Heckinger Report at Teachers College at Columbia University. And hopefully we can hold another panel of some kind of conversation in the future at Innovations for Youth, my university's research action-based interdisciplinary center for innovations for young people and adolescents. And so I'm really excited to collaborate with this office further on those things and see what more we can get done to elevate C2C. And I'll pass it on to Alexis.
Yes, thank you, Member Nguyen, for just those words, and thank you, Angelique and Shannon and the team for really just championing us, especially as like the first students on the board and serving as advisory board members. Just means a lot to know that you're championing this work, you're living out C2C's values, and just making data more equitable and democratizing a lot of this, demystifying education for a lot of students. So it means a lot to be able to really champion this work in our own ways and talk about our stories. And if we had tools like this, it would have been a game changer in understanding different pathways to different career fields, especially as first generation students. So just really wanted to thank the team and just express a lot of gratitude for just the work, because there's a lot of coordination that goes behind the scenes, and I know you guys are a small team. So I just really wanted to say thank you for that, and thank you for all these opportunities to engage with the office.
Thank you both. I know, we started the conversation on the student authored op-ed in August. I just want to note that, and we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel when Alexis and Mike's op-ed will be published at the end of this month in the Heckinger Report. So please be on the lookout for that. Additionally, at the March Community Engagement Advisory Board meeting, C2C Director of Engagement Shannon Serrato shared a new opportunity to support language access so that all Californians, including those whose first language is not English, can benefit from C2C's tools. Members Gamboa and Johnson volunteered to serve as our language access liaisons. And in just 3 months, thanks to their inputs and their insight, we launched a Spanish resources landing page and added a dedicated Spanish introduction to the Student Pathways data story to help guide our Spanish-speaking users. Members Johnson and Gamboa, I'd like to invite y'all to share more about our collaboration together.
I guess I'll go first. It's Member Johnson. It has been really rewarding to work on this, and I'm really grateful to the C2C team because part of why so much has gotten done really quickly is because of how much you guys care about language access as a part of this office, of these data tools. And so I just, again, want to give you all kudos. I know Member Gamboa and I are always talking about what's left to be done, what more can be done, how we can continue to grow language access for the system. But I appreciate all your hard work, and the resources webpage is like perfect, and it's such a wonderful step in the right direction. So appreciate you all.
Yeah, kudos to everyone again. Member Gamboa. I also want to give a shout out to Aldo, who's actually doing the interpretation right now for us. So I know how difficult that can be, but also to everybody. I mean, what we've done today is just a testament to how much care you all have to making sure that all communities in the state of California have access to, understanding their path, and to be able to share that and be part of this adventure with each and every one of you has been an honor. So thank you for all that you all do.
Thank you both. We're excited to continue refining how we engage with Californians across the state. And to the rest of the members, this is just the beginning, as I've shared before. Engagement opportunities are ongoing, whether that's helping identify speakers for upcoming community conversations, co-hosting events, and partnering with other outreach activities. So we welcome your continued involvement. If you're interested in further engagement with the office, please don't hesitate to reach out. Next slide, please. Thank you. And in the spirit of collaboration, the office asked our Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Board members for upcoming events that might spark some interest from this body. So I want to thank Data and Tools Advisory Board members Tamika Connor, Reagan Faust, Oliver Shack, and John Watson, as well as Community Engagement Advisory Board members Natalia Gonzalez, Marissa Johnson, Jackie Navarez, and Alexis Takagi for sharing events that might be of interest for this body. You can scan the QR code on the screen to learn more about these events. I'll now pass it back to Mary Kate to facilitate questions and comments if we have time. We may not have time.
We are at the 2 p.m. mark, but if there's any members that would like to say anything, we're happy to hear you. Member Ready, please.
Thanks. I'll make it quick. So one of the things that I do from time to time is talk to journalists and reporters to help them understand the dashboard or the data that they're looking at and provide sort of that lens and correction. I got my first call about the Student Pathways dashboard from the C2C this past week. So, I'll keep the details of it between myself and that journalist, but just, I think it's worth noting that folks are looking at it. People are using it. So kudos to the team. And I will also note that for folks who get calls like that, my first instinct was to reach out to the office and just say, hey, I've got this call coming up. Anything you think I should be aware of? I didn't get any talking points. I didn't get any direction, but I did get some things to think about and just keep in mind, some normal reminders that I speak for myself and not for the commission, but just some other helpful things, right? And so, like I say, kudos to the team for putting it together and then for helping me prep for my call. But it's cool to see that these things are starting to bubble up.
Love that. Thank you. Anyone else before we close this item out? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And looking forward to continuing to engage with members at our fall meeting. What I'd love to transition to now is open it up for general public comment. We've had folks that have been on the line with us for many, many hours, and they'd like to comment. I am seeing we have one commenter in. I'm going to hand this off to Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez to please manage this item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Kate. Confirming that we have no members in Sacramento wishing to comment, I'm going to turn it over to Zoom. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand at this time if you would like to comment on the general public comment portion. Right now, I see one raised hand. Okay. All right. With one public commenter on the line, I'd like to ask my colleague, Sofia Aguilar, to please proceed to slide 89. All right, Roy, I have permitted you to speak. You have 2 minutes for general public comment, and that starts now.
Good afternoon, advisory board members. Roy Tungilava, policy analyst with Etris West. First, we want to thank the advisory board members who are coming to a close in their appointments for their service to the data system. Second, we want to thank the office for continuing the proposal process to strengthen and expand the data system, and you all for your robust discussions around data proposals this morning. Today, we want to uplift the proposals submitted focused on adding pathways and placement data to strengthen teacher workforce insights, which complements the forthcoming teacher training and retention dashboard and recommends incorporating key data on teacher vacancies, teacher assignments, and preparation pathways, critical components currently missing from the P20W dataset. Research consistently shows that having an effective teacher is one of the most significant factors in a student's success and post-secondary outcomes. As California continues to grapple with persistent teacher shortages, particularly in high-need schools and subject areas, policymakers currently lack the integrated data necessary to fully understand where these shortages are most severe, who is most impacted, and whether our policy responses and investments are effectively addressing these gaps. Fortunately, this data already exists within agencies like CDE and the CTC, including teacher assignment monitoring outcomes data, teacher vacancy estimates, and teacher supply data. By adding these data into C2C, we can better understand where stronger alignment may be needed between teacher preparation and regional workforce needs. We hope to see this proposal prioritized and would be happy to be a resource for you all. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment to see if we have any other individuals interested in a public comment. Seeing none, I will close the general public comment portion of the meeting today. Thank you.
Wonderful. What we'll do here now is we'll talk about future agenda items. This is our next agenda item. If members have any questions, you can feel free to raise your hand. Wonderful. Hearing nothing from members, we'll open it up for public comment. Thank you.
Yes, confirming that there's no one in the room in Sacramento wishing to submit a public comment. For members attending via Zoom, please raise your hand at this time if you would like to comment on this agenda item. Okay, seeing no raised hands, I will close the public comment portion.
Perfect. We're at our last agenda item, adjournment. We did it. Sorry, we're a few minutes over 2, but before I officially adjourn the meeting, I'd just like to thank all of the speakers that we had with us today. I truly appreciate everybody's time and effort invested in preparing and presenting. Also, this meeting wouldn't have been as exceptional as it was if we didn't have you members. So thank you for bringing your best today. Thank you for your thought and partnership. We truly appreciate it. And for the members of the public, we're always committed to hearing your comments. So that concludes it. Looking forward to things on the horizon. Governing board meeting will meet on Friday, August 15th, so feel free to join us. We'll be in Sacramento, but obviously always open to folks to join us via Zoom. And then we will be having our next data and tools meeting on Friday, October 3rd. Folks can join us virtually, and then we'll meet with CEAB on Friday, October 24th. So that ties it up, and I'd love to adjourn the meeting right here and right now at 2:07 p.m. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all.